Episode 1. After Akane Nishino wakes up in the morning and takes a shower, she gets prepared for school and has her personal driver takes her. There, she is greeted by most students and encounters the one she despises, Kageno-san. They exchange greetings, but he calls her Nishimura much to her annoyance and she corrects Kageno that her name isn't Nishimura. Kageno apologizes, stating he was pretty good at remembering named NPC, but lately haven't got much sleep, and calls her Nishitani. She gets quietly annoyed and corrects him again by repeating her actual name, but Kageno again gets it wrong and calls her Nishimura as he leaves. Akane notes that she doesn't despise him for getting her name wrong, but for never looking at her, and even when his eyes are facing her direction, they seem to be looking at somewhere far off place. Going about her school day, Akane recalls back to when she was in middle school. She had to take a break from show business due to a scandal and has been hiding behind a mask ever since. She plays the teacher's pet, so that the teachers like her, and plays the popular girl, so that students would like her, being very careful to make sure no one hates her. After school, she calls her driver, but he doesn't pick up as he was attacked by some men. As he didn't came to pick her up, Akane is forced to head home walking, which is her first time doing it since the incident from middle school. On her way, she is kidnapped by the men that attacked the driver. While she loses consciousness, she sees Kageno hiding around a corner. Later, Akane wakes up bound in some warehouse, as one kidnapper tells her that the daughter of Nishino Zaibutsu shouldn't walk alone at night. The other kidnapper tells her that she just needs to stay there and she will be freed once they get the ransom. Outside, Kageno observes the kidnapper and moves to change clothes and don on a mask. The kidnapper wants to have some fun with Akane, as he notes that this should be her second kidnapping as the first time because of some stalker. Kageno then comes down from the roof window, introducing himself as a stylish ruffian slayer. The lead kidnapper pulls out a gun, but is disarmed when the masked Kageno throws a piece of glass to injure him. Kageno then charges the guy, throwing him to the ground before smashing his face. The other kidnapper sees that Kageno isn't an ordinary man and states he was bored from doing kidnappings with amateurs. The remaining kidnapper notes he is former military and readies a knife to attack Kageno, who uses crowbars. Although Kageno manages to disarm the man, he is still overwhelmed, then decides to get serious and show him the potential he found in crowbars as he fought bikers. From this, the man then realizes his opponent is the Balaclava Berserker, a man who has been fighting the bikers with crowbars. Kageno notes that the bikers started wearing helmets after that, so he had to stop using the crowbars like tonfa and instead use them as regular clubs. Kageno then proceeds to break the man's leg and brutalizes him, ending the fight and turning his focus to Akane. Taking the kidnapper's knife, Kageno then frees Akane and tells her to be more careful next time. Akane then calls the police and her father uses his connections to make the case not go public. The next day, Akane goes to school and greets Kageno once more, but he correctly calls her Nishino. While she is ready to correct him, she stops when she realizes he got her name right, and this time it feels as though he is looking at her. She then felt he is also living a life behind a mask, developing an interest in her odd schoolmate. The next morning, a local news report goes out that Minoru Kageno was run down by a truck on the side of a road and did not survive. When adrift after death, Kageno doesn't remember when he started his fixation, but he always dreamt of being a hero. He spent his days training, while acting as the background character in his school life. He reached a point where he could beat up some guys, but still didn't have a chance when surrounded by armed men. If he became the best martial artist in the world, he might be able to beat said men, but he still wouldn't be able to do anything about a nuclear missile. Kageno wants to overcome those limits, determined to do so no matter the cost. After being hit by a truck, Kageno is reborn in a new world, a medieval world with emerging technologies and populated by more than humans. He formed an organization and with his squad, they ready to start an operation in service to their master. In this new world, Kageno had obtained a new power, magic. Now he wants to be the one who operates from the shadows, showing everyone their inner strength and greatness deep within themselves, as the one true eminence in shadow that he could never achieve in his previous life in this new world. Episode 2. At sunset in the Kagenu Baronate lands, Alpha reports to Sid Kagenu, telling him that everything he said was true and that she found mentions in ancient texts of what they believe is cult of Diablos. Sid acknowledges her report, and when she voices trepidation at carrying out her mission to eliminate the cult, Sid recites how they lurk in the shadows to hunt the shadows. Alpha is once more reassured, and walks over to Sid, contemplating his dream to be the eminence in shadow, but also thinking how Alpha was kind of a pushover. After dying in a car incident, Minoru Kageno was reborn as the son of Baron Kagenu, an aristocrat living out in the boonies ruling a nearly remote stretch of territory. He quickly understood the situation of his reincarnation and soon felt there was magic in the air. The Kagenu family has been producing Dark Knights for generations, soldiers who can enhance their abilities using magic, and the family place their big hopes for the talented Claire Kagenu, Sid's older sister. Similar to his previous life, Sid grows up staying as a background character and doesn't draw any attention to himself. However, he ventures out at night and fight bandits to take their ill-gotten gains. Using his slime bodysuit, he easily kills the bandits, and takes their gold and treasures, among which he finds a cage with some rotting creature. Sid realizes it's a possessed body, and sensing that it suffers from magical overloaded, he takes interest in it. Sid takes it to an empty home in an abandoned village, where he shoots it with magic and performs other experiments on it. After a month, he finally manages to contain the magical overload in the creature, then returns to its normal form, a beautiful young elf girl. Wondering his next move, Sid decides to put on an act and props himself atop a box as the elf awakens. As she is astonished to find herself healed of her possession, Sid states he broke the curse once imposed upon her, one of the hero's descendants. To add to his story, he shows her a book about the 3 heroes who defeated Diablos and tells her it's actually a true story, surprising the girl. Sid continues how after the heroes slew the monster, it cursed their bloodlines with its dying breath, but someone altered history to make the descendants into objects of scorn labeled possessed. Sid initially refuses to conclude his story, being unable to improvise an ending, but the elf girl pleads for the name of her enemy, so Sid concludes how the cult of Diablos are responsible, as they are plotting to revive the demon, enraging the girl. Sid states that he works in the shadows to stop the cult, and introduces himself as Stylish before correcting himself and naming himself Shadow, he who lurks in the shadows and hunts shadows. Sid asks her if she would join him and, having lost everything, she agrees to join him and pledges to punish the guilty with death. When she takes Shadow's hand, he bestows a slime cloak to clothe her. Sid elaborates how there may be government leaders and their ignorant subordinates, but she remains dedicated much to his glee. She further explains how they need to find more heroes' descendants, collect funds and strengthen their headquarters to expand their organization, with Sid agreeing, though whispering how they'd need to do so in moderation. With their pact secure, Sid names their organization Shadow Garden and renames the girl as Alpha. 3 years pass and Sid is now 13 years old and practices with his sister. While he can easily defeat her, still knowing the optimized sword skills of his past life, he acts weak and lets her defeat him. Claire scolds her brother before leaving to ready for her farewell party, leaving a maid to tend to Sid. As Claire is now 15 years old, the children nobles at that age start attending the Midra Academy for Dark Knights. On the day of Claire's scheduled departure, she was abducted and her room ransacked. Sid calls on Beta for answers, and she reports that Alpha is looking for clues to finding Claire. During the last 3 years, Alpha had recruited more members for their organization. Beta explains that Claire is likely still alive and was kidnapped by a high-ranking member belonging to the cult of Diablos, who probably believe Claire to be one of the hero's descendants. Although Sid acknowledges, he thinks to himself how when the girls get involved, they think bandits are cult members. Beta takes out a map and states they have few known hideouts, but she doesn't know which one they're keeping Claire. So Sid makes a slime knife and throws it at the map, but he ends up missing the spot he wanted, but still states that they will find his sister there. While Beta initially doesn't find anything on the map, she then figures out that the cryptograms are a bluff, and there is actually a secret hideout at the location pointed by Sid. He then tells her to contact the 7 Shadows, and ponders how her acting in their roleplay deserves an award. At the hideout, Viscount Grease is holding Claire chained with magic sealing chains. He is impressed by her ability to still dodge at close range and comments her father taught her well. But Claire explains that she learned by fighting her brother, to which Grease then asks if he healed her when she showed signs of possession, per some rumors he heard. An incensed Claire denies it, stating there is no way he can heal her. Grease notes that they may need to look into her brother, too, as a precaution, triggering Claire's protectiveness, and she breaks one of the chains before injuring her other arm to free herself, intending to kill him should they touch her brother. Grease then knocks her out with a punch to her face, wanting to ready her for testing before a subordinate races in, alerting Grease that there are intruders. Grease's men are easily cut to pieces by the Seven Shadows, despite their abilities being comparable to the Royal Guard. Facing them, Alpha states they are Shadow Garden and their mission is to annihilate the cult of Diablos, causing an angered Grease to demand to know how they knew that name and secret. He attacks Alpha, but she has no trouble blocking his attacks and injures him, stating she won't kill him until they get answers from him. Seeing he is overwhelmed, Grease takes a pill that boosts his magic and he manages to push away Alpha before breaking the floor to escape through a secret tunnel. Alpha tells the girls there is no need to chase him as Shadow is after him, which is why they split up. Meanwhile, Shadow is lost and doesn't know where the girls went while walking around the tunnels before he encounters Grease. He attacks Shadow, who easily blocks his attack, then notes that while Grease has more magic power than Alpha, he doesn't know how to use it. Shadow decides to give Grease some lessons and blocks his attacks. As Shadow attacks Grease, the Viscount wondered if he ever was that overwhelmed in battle before, recalling his master's tutelage as a boy. Grease tells him no matter how strong he is, the darkness in the world is much deeper, thinking of his daughter and her fate. However, Shadow states he will just dive deeper. Grease takes more pills and augments himself even more, wanting to show Shadow that people are worthless, fragile, and powerless. Only Shadow manages to block his attacks and then channels a large amount of magic, finishing the fight as he cuts down Grease. As he falls, Grease notes he was powerless against the darkness, but maybe Shadow won't be. Taking his locket, Sid walks away impressed how Grease was tough for a bandit. The next day, Claire returns home under her own power in a bad mood, but her wounds healed overnight, and she departed for the academy the following day. Sid is eager to go to the academy himself, but if fine as he has 2 more years and needs to give the girl some work. However, Alpha tells him it's time they leave him, which leaves him shocked and speechless. Episode 3. On a train leaving his hometown, Sid recalls how it had been 2 years since Alpha had told him that the cult of Diablos is an enormous global organization and that they needed to part with him in order to fight it. Considering how people move on from dreams and play as they grow older, Sid feels that that's just a nice way of telling him that they were now grown up and wanted their freedom, and how they don't want to continue playing this fighting the cult game. When Sid turned 15, he enrolled in the same school as his sister in the Midra Kingdom royal capital, the Midra Academy for Dark Knights. 7 months into his academy life, Sid continues to live as a background character and made friends with Skell Adal and Potato, other bottom-of-the-pile nobles like him from nowhere notable. While heading to school, Skell and Poe remind Sid that as he scored the worst in the test, his penalty is to confess to the most sought-after girl in school and suffer her rejection. However, Sid was excited as he had wanted this to go through such a mob character scenario. Arriving at school, the girl in question was Princess Alexia Midger, who sharply rejects another guy's confession. That evening, Sid goes to confess to Alexia, shaking and muttering as part of his act while he feels he done a great job as a background character confession. Yet surprisingly, Alexia accepts, stating she was waiting for someone like him. The rumors quickly spread and people start to wonder who Sid is and what's so great about him. Sid, Skell and Poe wonder why she accepted him and guess that they would have had a chance if she accepted Sid. Alexia then joins them at lunch, which astonishes other students as that's the lower nobility section. The cafeteria staff serve a small buffet for her, but she comments she can't eat it all. The opportunistic Sid then gladly started eating her food, in an attempt to make her dump him by acting undesirable. As Alexia had heard that Sid is studying royal bush and fencing, she wanted to practice together late in their sword training class. Sid states that he cannot as he is in Section 9, the lowest section, but Alexia explained she put a good word for him and she got him in Section 1. Later, Sid joined Section 1 team where their advisor is Xenon Griffey, the official royal fencing instructor. Training with Alexia, Sid practices with her and notices that her attacks never land, she is too slow and doesn't use magic. And yet he realizes it's because the practice is to review their strokes and counterstrokes. Alexia does not use any superfluous acts and no wasted strokes, but Sid finds her technique good yet bland. After practice ends, Alexia states he has a good fencing style, but hates it as it feels. She is sparring with herself. Sid sees Alexia go over and tells Zenon that she is Sid's girlfriend now, as Zenon retorts that she won't change the fact that she is betrothed to him, even if it's still a public secret. As Alexia argues that he is a candidate for betrothal, Sid then realizes what is going on. After school, Sid confronts Alexia on just wanting someone to help her escape the engagement with Zenon, and chose a low-class aristocrat of whom she could easily control. As Alexia shamelessly confirms such, Sid states he doesn't want more attention and isn't interested in being mixed up in her problems, but Alexia playfully tells him, that's a bit cold coming from him. She reveals she knows he faked his confession after easily scaring his friends, who told her everything, and tells him that the student body will never let him have a peaceful day ever again should they learn he toyed with a young girl's heart. While Alexia wants to continue the boyfriend act until Zenon gives up, Sid notes that he may not give up, as it's clear Alexia is out of Sid's league, but Alexia knows so yet wants to buy some time until she figures out how to deal with it somehow. While Sid wants to refuse, Alexia takes out and throws a gold coin. Staring at it, Sid asks if he looks like someone that can be brought, as Alexia affirms such, and Sid agrees as much, hovering over the dropped coin. As she throws another coin, he jumps like a dog to fetch and catches it with his mouth. While Sid's parents' allowance isn't enough to carry his eminence in shadow operation, he can't let this chance slip by and obliges the bribe, deciding to continue being her boyfriend. Sid is glad that the students focus on her having a boyfriend and not him, which lets him play the background boyfriend character. While Alexia is prudent in public, she constantly badmouths Zenon behind the scenes. After some time, Sid decides to not argue with her and just agrees with everything she says. Sid wonders what is so bad about Zenon, and Alexia states how easy it is to pretend to be nice, so she judges people by their flaws. As Zenon presents as having none, that is not normal for a human, and so she distrusts him, which is also why she chose a flawed and imperfect person, like Sid, to date. After a couple of weeks of dating and no change, Alexia and Sid are riding the train when she tells him that he has the fencing basics, but nothing more than that, yet she can't take her eyes off him. He wonders what with her today, as her fencing was unusually aggressive and sloppy, and Alexia reveals how she always wanted to be as good as her sister, Iris. She didn't have what her sister had and decided to become stronger by herself, but others ended up calling Alexia the fencer ordinaire. It's unfortunate that Sid's fencing is as ordinary as hers, but Sid doesn't find it unfortunate and states he likes her fencing. Alexia reveals that her sister said the same thing after she suffered a humiliating defeat at the Bushin Festival, but that Iris couldn't understand how pathetic Alexia was feeling. Sid explains that he isn't a great person, and wouldn't care if someone kills 1,000,000 people on the other side of the world. But there are things that people find worthless, yet to him they are the few most precious things in life, which is why he likes her fencing style. Alexia draws her sword and asks him what he means by that, so Sid states he gets pissed off when people diss the things he likes. The train stops and Alexia leaves, telling Sid goodbye, making him guess this is the end of his unwanted relationship. The next morning, Skell and Poe apologize to Sid for telling everything to Alexia. While Sid is fine with events, the duo wonder how far he got with her while dating for 2 weeks. Sid states he didn't get anywhere, which annoys them as they state they would have gone all the way. Arriving at the school gate, Zenon and 2 other school knights stop Sid and his friends. A serious Zenon states Sid should know that Alexia didn't return to her dorm last night, and they are investigating it as a potential kidnapping. Since Sid was the last person to be seen with her, he is their first suspect. As he sees more knights covering his possible escape, Sid surrenders with a sigh and realizes he is in big trouble. Episode 4. Under the city, in a labyrinth of passages, Alexia Midra awakens chained in a cell and sees a humanoid monster in the next cell over. She nonchalantly concludes she has been abducted as a deranged man, then arrives in a lab coat, excited to get royal blood. Alexia passively greets him and wonders why he wants her blood, as the man states it's demon blood and he will resurrect the demon. Alexia just accepts the motions of events, resorting to await her rescue soon enough. Meanwhile, Sid is being beaten and interrogated under the night orders custody about Princess Alexia's location. Sid gets excited finding himself in such a classic minor character interrogation, and decides to act the part properly, so they don't outshine him. As his two interrogators use torture by needles, he starts yelling and crying that he doesn't know anything. Feeling he is performing well, Sid continues to feign panic while quietly bored in his mind, wondering how long this act will take. At the academy, Xenon Griffey meets with Princess Iris Midger to state how he feels responsible for Alexia's kidnapping. But as Iris wonders if Sid could be responsible, Xenon states that there is evidence of the abduction, but considering Sid's skill level, he shouldn't have been able to kidnap Alexia and believes his innocence. After 5 days of continued interrogation, and no leads, Iris decides to release him with orders of continued surveillance after he is released. Outside the building, Claire wants to speak with the knights and profess Sid's innocence, but she is impeded by other students to not complicate the situation. As Claire refuses to listen, Rose Oriana is forced to intervene in stopping her, but Claire soon escapes her obstacle by dislocating Rose's shoulder before more students move to restrain her. With no more to learn, the knights have Sid released and have 2 agents pursue him as he goes home on the train. However, Alpha neutralizes the 2 undercovers and shows up at Sid's dorm room, dressed in a girls' academy uniform. She explains that their organization is growing and they have been gaining more information on the cult. Yet Sid notes to himself that the girls are visiting him often while they are likely living normal lives, but is happy that they still play his game and visit him. Alpha elaborates that Alexia was kidnapped by the cult due to her blood and that they are investigating where she could be. Sid finishes the sandwich she brought for him, helping to tidy up the trash and take his shoes off, before advising him to be more active and trusting of their efforts with him. As Sid promises to show more trust with them, she tells him he owes her a sandwich as he ate hers as well before, suiting up to depart, and asks him if he wants her to dispose of the knights that interrogated him. Sid explains they were just doing their job, smiling as he thinks they deserve a reward, and Alpha accepts. Before leaving, Alpha informs him that Delta is here as she has been missing him, and Sid is surprised to hear about this update. Later that evening, Claire angrily wants to punish the knights who hurt Sid, but Rose once again stops her and forces her to return to her room. Once Sid sets his room to befit the eminence in shadow, where he takes out an expensive wine, masterpiece paintings, antique lamp, and other expensive decor. A short while later, Beta arrives in awe of the scene, and he tells her the time has come. The excited Beta explains that they are ready, and under Alpha's orders, they have gathered all available personnel in the capital, 114 people, a number which surprises Sid. Beta explains that they plan to launch simultaneous attacks on all sect hideouts and elaborates the roles taken by Alpha, Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon. Sid stops her, giving her a letter from the knights who interrogated him and stating that he will be taking Delta's spot. He takes his leave and meets the 2 knights who waited for him and throw him Alexia's boot to frame him to justify killing him. When the bodies of the 2 men that were following him are dropped behind the knights, Sid then proceeds to kill the 2 knights as Beta writes down his deeds. With the sound of Delta destroying a hideout heard across the city, the Shadow Garden start their attack. Underground, the Mad Doctor rushes to Alexia, stating that they are coming, as Alexia tries to tell him that the knights don't kill without a reason. The man shouts that he isn't afraid of the knights, perplexing Alexia, and he notes that he made a prototype device that should work even on a failed result as the entity next to Alexia's room. Upon injecting the disfigured creature, it becomes much larger and stronger, killing the madman once free. To Alexia's surprise, the monster then cuts her chains and frees her. As the creature climbs out to rampage in the streets above, Alexia initially notes herself lucky before she finds the upward escape from the creature is sealed off by rubble. While Alexia looks for an exit, he encounters Xenon at a sewer junction, who explains that this is his facility, and he was funding the doctor. Alexia snarls in rage considering the week she spent as a test subject, but voices she's happy to be proven right, as she always felt Xenon wasn't right in the head. Xenon explains that with her blood and the dead man's research, he will be guaranteed the 12th seat in the Knights of the Rounds, the highest-ranking knights in the order. Alexa asks Xenon if that's a club for psychopaths, but he states that the membership will elevate him beyond teaching and to status above most in society, insulting Alexia that she was a compensated target, as Iris was unreachable. Alexia attacks him in a rage, but she is no match for Xenon, who easily disarms her before punching her into the sewer water. As Xenon stands thinking himself superior, Sid then comes down a walkway and introduces himself as Shadow. Episode 5. As Shadow introduces himself, Xenon Griffey recognizes him as the one hounding the cult, but calls him a coward as he has been targeting only bases without the cult's core members. Xenon boosts how Shadow is now facing a core member in the future, 12th seed of rounds, but when he attacks Shadow, finds his opponent has already moved behind him. Placing himself between Xenon and Alexia Midger, Shadow mocks Xenon further by asking him where's this core member he spoke of. As the monster had escaped above ground, the knights engaged the creature after evacuating the citizens, but their attacks prove ineffective as the monster just heals. Seeing the chaos under the rainy night, Iris Midger arrives on scene and inflicts a more serious wound on the monster, but it heals from that as well. Adding severity to her next attack, Iris severs the monster's right arm, but that damage is easily regenerated. Seeing that, Iris moves to cut it into such small pieces that it cannot regenerate. Alpha interferes after Iris readies herself and states that the princess is just making the poor creature suffer. Engaging the monster, Alpha states that she knows the monster's pain and suffering but will put an end to it. Alpha then attacks the monster with a magic download, curing and returning her to her original human form as a young girl. Alpha takes the pendant she once held, revealing that she is Viscount Grease's daughter, Milia. The dismissive Alpha tells Iris that they are Shadow Garden and how she should just stay back, enjoying the show like a good audience member, as they deal with this situation. Back underground, Xenon decides to get more serious and uses more magical power in his attacks, but is still easily overwhelmed by Shadow. The furious Xenon continues to attack Shadow, easily blocking his attacks, the backlash of their exchange of blows quaking the underground sewers around them. Seeing the fight, Alexia is amazed by Shadow's swordsmanship, and sees that, at its core, his swordplay is ordinary. It's like her ideal swordplay, what she dreamed of when she was younger, but could never become an equal or strong than her sister. But as Shadow displays his technique as how she envisioned, Alexia recalls Iris's praise of her fencing style and reaches an epiphany. Once Shadow slashes an irate Xenon, the bested fencer demands he stop hiding his identity if he was indeed that strong. Smiling at the comment, Shadow states they are Shadow Garden and they hunt in the shadows, which is the sole purpose of their existence. Xenon is left baffled as Alexia is more inquiring as to the nature of the two organizations. Enraged, Xenon takes out a bottle with red pills and explains that by taking them he will awaken a new nature beyond human limitations, whereas an ordinary person would be overwhelmed by their tremendous power and die. Taking the pills, Xenon transforms and stating he is the third awakened, all while Shadow looks on in disappointment. Having far more destructive power than before, Xenon attacks Shadow, but is easily blocked yet again. As Shadow overwhelms Xenon, he tells him that there is no road to almightiness from borrowed power, stomping the pill bottle and setting a magic circle around Xenon but shielding Alexia. Xenon is frightfully astonished by the amount of magical energy, aghast at how powerful it is. Shadow recounts how there once was a man who wanted to withstand a nuclear bomb. The man then developed his muscles, honed his mind, perfected his skills, however there were still heights he could not attain. In time, Shadow realized that if he didn't want to be vaporized by a nuclear bomb, then all he needed to do was become nuclear himself. The terrified Xenon believes him to be crazy and tries slashing him, but his sword breaks as it hits Shadow, slumping back down in resigned defeat. Shadow then tells him to witness his almightiness as he uses his almighty power, chanting I am atomic. A huge explosion ensues, with Alexia safe outside the barrier of the magic, leaving a district-sized crater in the middle of the city. Alpha and the girls witness in awe as Shadow's magic illuminates the night sky, while Iris sees the inconceivable power and rushes towards it to save Alexia. Under a now clear night sky, Alexia finds herself unharmed and alone at the crater's epicenter, taking her sword from the ground and tests her fencing, finding better quality with her renewed dedication. Soon after, Iris sees her and races over to hug her sister, exclaiming how she is glad that she is alive. Sometime after, Alexia returns to school and tells Sid of what happened, thanking him for liking her fencing, and tells him that she also finally learned to like it. Before Sid can take his leave, Alexia admits that they were pretending to be a couple. Alexia wonders if Sid wants to keep the relationship going now with Xenon dead. However, Sid refuses, shocking Alexia, who feigns a smile before attacking him. The very spot would be where people found large amount of blood, but as there were no fatalities found nor missing persons reported, the case became one of the school's 7 mysteries, the bodiless murder. Elsewhere, the Shadow Garden girls review their progress against the cult, with Shadow having destroyed their base and Xenon Griffrey evaporated by the attack. They remain excited over how powerful Shadow is, recounting his atomic spell from last night, and how all of their enemies will one day vanish from his light. To business at hand, they have a report from Zeta, who found a target and is investigating, while Ada's research is also going smoothly. However, a remaining issue is someone pretending to be from Shadow Garden and delivering justice through defamatory acts of indiscriminate slaughter. The enemy are covering their tracks well, but Gamma is sure they will catch them. At the site of the destroyed cult base, Iris now knows about the cult and Shadow Garden. With Xenon an adherent of the cult, Iris cannot trust the Knight's order, so she entrusts two knights she knows she can trust, Glenn and Marco Granger. Needing to investigate both parties, Iris decides to form a new Knight Order under her power. With their joining, Iris reveals that they found an artifact amid the crime scene, but need to find someone who can decipher its functions. Meanwhile, as she's carrying a stack of books and reading her research, a distracted Sherry Barnett bumps into a blood-soaked Sid, who offers to help her up. The scholarly schoolgirl accepts, smitten by the bloody boy. Episode 6. Under the cover of night, a random citizen is attacked and killed, with their assailant repeated the same phrase "We are Shadow Garden" almost manically. In his place, a bloody flyer falls down, proclaiming Shadow Garden's sinister motives. The next day at the Academy dining hall, Skell and Poe give Sid at least a kiss when he was dating Princess Alexia. However, Sid tells them that they broke up and didn't do anything, prompting the disappointed Skell to recommend visiting a special place. While Poe interjects thinking something else, Skell clarifies he meant Mitsugoshi Company, a high-end retailer that sells all kinds of goods, including something new called chocolate. According to Skell, if they can use to give some chocolates to some girls, then they win them over. As Skell and Poe are too excited, Sid accepts the offer, as he is also quietly curious to see what this world calls chocolate. Elsewhere at the Midra Academy of Science, Princess Iris Midra presents an artifact discovered in the Cult of Diablo's hideout to Sherry Barnett, the kingdom's most brilliant mind. As Iris requests if she can decipher it, her father, Lutheran Barnett, encourages Sherry and she accepts, and Iris then assigns Crimson Order Knights Glenn and Marco Granger as Sherry's guards. Lutheran inquires if they are Iris's newly formed Knight Order, and while they may be a small order, they are people she trusts. Alexia also wishes to help and, after seeing her determination, Iris accepts. By evening twilight, Sid, Skell, and Poe reach the Mitsugoshi store, but the line is so big that they have to wait 80 minutes for their turns. Poe is worried given their curfews, likely heading back at dark, and nervous given he heard rumors of a killer going around at night. While waiting, a store employee asks Sid if he can come with her and answer some survey, rejecting Skell and Poe's eagerness to join him. Once inside, Sid feels Mitsugoshi resembles a department store from his old world, as there are many things that remind him of his world that he hasn't seen anywhere else in this world. Eventually arriving at the house atop the store building, Sid sees Gamma next to a throne and concludes her store belongs to her. She confirms as much and states how she made it after recreating items and goods from the wisdom Sid shared with them. Sid recalls telling the girls random stuff as he was mentoring them, noting how Gamma was the smartest among the girls. But he also knows she lacks athleticism, just as Gamma ends up falling the stairs in that very moment. Noting her nosebleed, Gamma invites Sid to sit on the throne, to which he feels like a king and thanks her by creating something like fireworks with his magic as her reward. As the other Shadow Garden girls are in awe, this excites Gamma especially as the light reminds her of the light he used to save her. Sid guesses she is making money, and Gamma confirms as much, stating she has several franchises around the city and beyond, and that they even use mail orders for remote area. She also displays how Shadow Garden has a secret budget of 1 billion zeni for immediate disposal. While Sid is shocked, Gamma apologizes if it isn't enough, but Sid reassures her it is fine, all while quietly panicking as she has more money than he could ever hope to get. Gamma guesses Sid came due to recent incidents where killers claim to be from Shadow Garden attacking random civilians, and they are investigating them already, promising Sid that they will put an end to his deeds. Sid had no idea, but as he recalls his own bloody incident with Alexia, Sid decides to play along and states he has some idea who it may be. Gamma is in awe of her master's genius and introduces Nu, the girl who brought him upstairs, really one of their newest numbers, explaining that Alpha acknowledged her skill and promoted her to a named number position. Sid tells her that he will call her if he needs her, but before taking his leave, he asks Gamma to purchase 3 of the cheapest chocolate packages. While Gamma states she will give him their finest chocolate for free, Sid gets happy and while laughing with Gamma, as he steals 1 gold coin, roughly 10,000 zenny. At night, Sid and his friends are rushing home as they remark how he took too long. While Sid guesses that Alexia went crazy and had started killing people. But as he starts to wonder why she would do these things, he hears something in the distance. He stops to tell his friends that he needs to poop right away, urging them to go before they see him fail. Skell and Poe race off believing that is very manly and swear not to forget him, and will never tell anyone about this. Once they're gone, Sid then goes in the back alley where he finds Alexia, surprised to see her fighting some men who claim to be from Shadow Garden. They manage to injure her, but Sid shows up as Shadow and kills one of the men, telling the others that they will also pay for impersonating Shadow Garden. As the men run, an exhausted Alexia asks Shadow why he is fighting, but he tells her to stay out of it, flying away as Alexia faints from pain in the alley. As the men escape to a rooftop, Shadow follows and kills one of them before Nu arrives and congratulates Shadow's expeditious discovery. Nu requests that he leaves the interrogation for information to her, so Shadow permits her, as she disarms him of weapon and limb, stating that she isn't as forgiving as Shadow. Elsewhere, a cult member informs the Gaunt Knight that he lost contact with the puppet and the 2 other men. The Knight states that it's fine as they located the item they need and their priority is retrieving it. At the academy, Alexia has her injuries addressed and updates Iris that the killer was impersonating Shadow Garden, adding that Shadow is fighting the cult. Recalling how she met Alpha during the multiple attacks on the city, Iris hopes that they will learn something more when the artifact gets deciphered. Curious, Alexia asks her who she thinks is the real enemy between Shadow Garden and the cult, only for Iris to state she believes both are a threat and that she won't allow anyone to wreak havoc in the kingdom. The next day on the train for school, rumors spread that Sid had soiled himself on his way back to the dorm. A nervous Skell and Poe try to change the topic and ask Sid if he got the chocolate from yesterday. Thankful he did, they are excited to commence with their plan. At school, Skell nervously gives chocolate to an upper-class woman he likes, much to her disgust. However, her betrothed arrives and wants to have a chat with Skell as the girl keeps his chocolate. With nothing more to do, Sid and Poe take their leave. Later, in the library, Poe claims he won't follow Skull's footsteps, elaborating that he learned all about the girl. He plans on giving chocolate to an unhealthy detail. As Poe approaches her, she recognizes him as her stalker and yells for help, with Poe being attacked. Unenthused, Sid decides to just give his chocolate to the first girl he sees and be over with his background character moment. Carrying a stack of research books, Sherry then sits next to him, and Sid gives her the chocolate before leaving. Looking back at his gift, Sherry recognizes Sid as the blood-soaked boy from the other day. Taking the gift to her room, atop her paused research, Sherry wonders what exactly chocolate is. As her father arrives, Lutheran recognizes the chocolate and explains it's been a recent popular confection. When Sherry tells him that a boy gave it to her, her father guesses that it's a present and it must have been love at first sight. He wonders what she will tell him as he must be waiting for an answer. He also tells her that, while study and research is important, she also needs to learn how to interact with others. After a slight coughing fit, Lutheran reassures her that he has been feeling better lately and is lucky to have such a good daughter, as Sherry states she is the lucky one as he adopted her. Lutheran remarks how Sherry's mother would be so proud of her, given her growth as a researcher as well, and voices confidence in Sherry's abilities. Episode 7. While examining the box of chocolate in her office, Sherry Barnett thinks of what her father told her about love at first sight. She finally decides to try the chocolate, finding it really sweet and growing her own infatuation toward her admirer. After school at the academy, Nu disguises as a student and approaches Sid to tell him that the man they caught had undergone powerful brainwashing. With his mind broken, she wasn't able to obtain any relevant information from him. While Nu elaborates the children of Diablos, Sid is distracted from thinking how Skell ended up signing him for the Bushin Festival, a prominent fencing tournament. As New explains that they confirmed a presence of a named first child in the royal capital, Rex, the game of betrayal, she clarifies a first child are those who maintain their sense of self despite being one of the children. Sid states he needs some time to think and leaves. New stares at him in awe, believing he has already reached the solution. Seeing the other students going about their afternoon, New reflects on how her past ended from her demon possession, grateful for who she is now and preferring her current self. At the tournament qualifiers, Claire easily wins her fight and pins her opponent to the ground, with the audience praising her performance. Meanwhile, Skell and Poe place bets, lamenting their lost earnings on poor selections, before Skell sounds baffled hearing Sid is next. With Student Council President Rose Oriana against Sid, who recalls how Rose is from a nation of the arts but is the best swordswoman at the academy. As he thinks how she is a definite named character, he says aloud how one should be grateful for such good fortune, surprising Rose. As their fight starts, Sid decides to show his 48 techniques he mastered and lets himself get hit to cough up fake blood, part of his secret background character technique, spinning drill fall, bloody tornado. An unsightly defeat in the first round at the hands of an indisputable champion, Sid stops the judge before he can deem Rose the winner, wishing to continue when he really wants to show off his other 47 other techniques. After Sid continues standing after each clean hit wanting the fight to continue, Rose is surprised by his determination and decides to get serious, but the judge intercedes to save Sid, summarily announcing Rose the winner. The judge states how it's too dangerous for Sid to continue after losing so much blood, and despite Sid's protests, he is carried out. With the bout finished, an impressed Rose commits Sid's name to memory. After the fight, a heavily bandaged Sid hopes he will still get a chance to show the remaining of his techniques, but will skip school for a few days for now to sell the illusion of him recovering. He is then approached by Sherry, oblivious that she is awestruck by him, who explains that she watched his fight and felt he was incredible as he kept standing up, even though she normally doesn't watch sword fights. She then gives him cookies she baked as thanks and suggests they can start as friends. Sid isn't sure why she gave him cookies and what she means by starting as friends, but he accepts, to which she tells her father and he joins them. Sid recognizes him as an important person, Lutheran Barnett, assistant principal of the Academy of Science. Sid notes that if he wishes to remain as obscure as possible, he shouldn't be having a contact with him. After some small talk, he uses his injuries as an excuse to leave. That evening, Sherry is thinking about Sid while eating some of the chocolate he gave her and wonders if she should visit him since they are friends. Recalling how he dated Princess Alexia a short while ago, she decides to go and talk with Alexia. While the princess invites Sherry in, guessing her visit is to talk about the artifact, Sherry reveals she is actually there for her advice. Nervous, Sherry mentions Alexia's being relationship with Sid and wonders if it was true. Alexia states they broke up as they weren't dating in reality, but pretending to be a couple for specific reasons. Sherry gets jubilant by the information, and states she became friends with Sid the other day, progressively upsetting Alexia. Sherry wasn't able to concentrate on her research, but now is glad to learn that they aren't together, leaving happy while Alexia gets frustrated. Outside the door, Marco Granger hears the room destroyed by Alexia. After 5 days, Sid returns to school and feels that everyone is a bit nicer than usual to him. Rose then arrives to explain the student council election to fill the vacancy, while noticing Sid's return to class. Concurrently, a masked knight from the cult enacts their plan, creating a barrier around the school that only Sid seemingly notices. When Alexia returns to school, she sees the gate is closed during school hours and that the guard is dead. As Sid notices he can't use his magic, masked men burst into the room claiming to be from Shadow Garden, explaining that they are taking over the academy. While Rose decides to fight them, she soon realizes she can't use magic while the Shadow Garden pretenders are. As one of them easily breaks Rose's sword and moves in to kill her, Sid rushes in and pushes her away, taking the hit and falls to the ground, covered in blood. Episode 8. As terrorists attack the academy, Sid is secretly excited as they are fulfilling a terrorist takeover fantasy. But seeing that they are about to kill Rose, he jumps in, stating to himself, as it is the role of a background character to be killed first in that scene. As blood gushes out and Rose is in shock, Sid grins thinking the scene was perfect. A distraught Rose wonders why he gave his life away to save her, but concludes he fell in love with her, explaining why he was motivated to keep standing when he fought her and sacrificed himself. Threatening Rose to comply, the terrorists then move all the students to the auditorium, leaving Sid in the classroom. Finally alone, Sid starts pounding his heart until it starts beating again. Sid voices to himself how he was lucky that he was successful with his secret technique, where he stops his heart for 10 minutes, but maintained regular blood flow to his brain via magic. Although his magic is still obstructed, Sid circumvents the restriction once he narrows his mana into threads. Given how the terrorists set up a magic blocking scenario, he feels it would be rude to ignore it, donning his jacket before taking his leave. At the Midra Academy of Science, Rex breaches into Sherry's room and claims to be from Shadow Garden, but then wonders if it was Shadow Guardian. He states his job is simply to retrieve the artifact, and once he is done, is allowed to wreak as much havoc as he wants. Rex moves to take the artifact in Sherry's hands, but is stopped by Glenn. Rex is impressed he managed to do it without magic, and Glenn claims such is easy when his opponent is weaker. While Glenn and Marco keep the terrorists busy, they let Sherry run away with the artifact. On a rooftop surveying the academy grounds, Sid observes the movement of the terrorists, and is quite excited about the whole situation. Yet he is annoyed that they were all wearing black at midday, disappointed they aren't doing it properly as he wears black robes at night. Predicting their formula, Sid decides to play things slowly until nighttime and snipes quite a few of the terrorists, so that he can make his grand appearances easier. Upon noticing a pink-haired girl running around and almost begging to be captured, Sid realizes she is Sherry and snipes the terrorists that move toward her. Sensing that the main story is progressing, Sid protects Sherry while she makes her way to her father's office, taking out several enemies to save her from capture or detection. After enough close saves, Sid catches Sherry when she ends up tripping and falling on the stairs. He tells her what she was doing that drew notice and asks her to remove her noisy slippers. Before reaching her father's room, Sid ends up taking out a few more terrorists, trying to help Sherry reach the good ending as her supporting role. Sherry finds the book she needed, and explains that the artifact is the Eye of Avarice, which absorbs and stores the magic from any user, but it can be programmed to ignore some magical frequencies. Sherry postulates it cannot absorb magical traces that are too small, or powerful spells exceeding its capacity, but isn't a human capable of the latter. Once the artifact has absorbed all it could absorb, it will release all the stored energy at once. Since all the students are in the auditorium, Sherry guesses that the artifact is somewhere nearby and it will kill all in the auditorium in an explosion upon releasing all that energy. Because of that, Sherry states her father didn't publish his findings in academia and gave the artifact to the government for safekeeping. Sherry also explains that the artifact she was researching is used to control the Eye of Avarice and store the energy for a long-term period. Accessing a hidden switch, Sherry plans on using the basements to reach the auditorium safely. Once she is close to the Eye of Avarice, she will activate her artifact and stop the Eye of Avarice from exploding. Sid thinks how the plan is pretty good, but while the ending might be a little weak, it'll afford him a chance to wreak havoc as Shadow. However, Sherry left all her tools needed to fine-tune the complementing artifact in her room. Luckily, Sid volunteers he will get the tools for her, and leaves her in her father's office. In the auditorium, Rex reports to the Cult Knight about the Night Order, but the Cult Knight dismisses that, demanding an update on Rex retrieving the artifact, and the Cult Knight has to threaten death before Rex capitulates to complete his mission. Before he leaves, Rex informs the Cult Knight that some of their men had been taken out by someone truly skilled and guesses that Shadow Garden is here. The Cult Knight notes that once his ambitions are realized, he will be reinstated in the Knights of Rounds. In the crowd, New keeps a vigil of the students and the cultists on the auditorium stage before departing. As Rex is walking with 4 of his men, the 2 behind him are killed in an instant before the 2 in front of him are also done away with. As Rex examines the corridor, Sid strikes him before he can react, and thinking Sid's speed is from an artifact, Rex creates a net around himself. Although stating Sid will get caught in his net no matter what artifact he uses, Rex will know. Except Rex turns around to see Sid just as he proceeds with attacking Rex, eventually taking him into a classroom with each seat taken by a propped-up dead terrorist. As Sid attacks Rex again, he notes that Rex is awesome, frightening one of the cult's named children before meeting his end. Meanwhile, Nu finds the deceased Glenn, noting how a prestigious knight was no match, and they meet a swift end with their magic sealed away. She sees an unconscious Marco, noting his placement in the Crimson Order, and is ready to kill him. A moment later, Sid surprises Nu with his arrival looking for Sherry's tools, as Nu explains that Marco was once her betrothed. When asked what she'll do, Nu concludes she has no reason to do anything, so Sid concludes they do nothing. Nu then reports that Shadow Garden had infiltrated the academy and are awaiting orders. However, their membership will not be able to use magic, as it is a risk with their slime bodysuit malfunctioning, and only the 7 shadows can operate in these circumstances. Currently, only Gamma is in the capital, but as this type of mission isn't her forte, she'll act as rear commander. Even Nu herself can only use about half of her power right now, but Gamma predicts the magic barrier will lift soon. As she continues her report, the cult has reworked their movements to a defense play. While Princess Iris Midra may be the only one of use in a battle, she is debating with the Night Order commander over jurisdiction due to objections from the palace. While she concludes how Shadow Garden's numbers are instructed to wait for enemy movement or Shadow's command, Sid asks her to help him find some items. After obtaining all the tools, Nu inquires why he needs them and Sid explains the tools are to fine-tune an artifact that can counter the Eye of Avarice, what is blocking their magic. Once they fine-tune the other artifact, they can neutralize the Eve of Avarice and allow everyone their magic usage again. Nu is in awe of Sid's genius, with identifying and remedying an artifact's effects, with Sid promising the artifact's readiness by sundown, as Nu replies she'll ready their forces by that time. Once Sid is out of sight, Nu turns to the unconscious Marco to tell him he has been spared another day, leaving him with a slight cut on his throat before departing. As the knights hold a perimeter, Gamma and her Shadow Garden contingent stand atop the auditorium ready for Sid's signal, with Nu in the crowd readying their direction. Once Sid brings the tools to Sherry, she starts fine-tuning the artifact while asking for her father's help. Episode 9. At dusk, Princess Iris and the knights are unable to do anything without their magic and are forced to stay outside the academy. As the knights struggle to formulate a counteroffensive, they start to consider another spy among the school, as Xenon Griffey was likely not working alone. Meanwhile, Gamma and her numbers await orders to move in, as Nu continues her vigilance amid the student hostages. In her father's office, Sherry completes her modification of the artifact, and is ready to head into the tunnels to disable the Eye of Avarice. But before they step into the tunnels, Sherry reflects on her mother's murder when she was a child, and how Lutheran comforted her, offering to adopt Sherry. As Lutheran supported her mother's research, Sherry is determined to repay him, as he'd always be stating how she was as great a researcher as her mother. Sherry thanks Sid for everything he did for her as he leaves her to head into the tunnels alone to complete her objective. At nightfall, the cult knight wonders, why is Rex taking that long, his coughing getting worse, as a subordinate informs him that Rex and several guards are still unaccounted for. As some of the terrorists start shooting the students for fun, Rose orders the students to not do anything, as they won't stand a chance without their magic, and the cult knight being in another league than them. Once Sherry reaches the auditorium, witnessing the cruelty, she sees the cult knight holding the Eye of Avarice and activates her artifact. In a bright flash, it disables the magic blocking field, providing an opening for Rose to attack one of the terrorists, stating their magic is back, and leading the students to start fighting back. As the students retaliate, the terrorists are in disarray until ordered to attack by the cult knight, who moves to secure the other artifact Sherry used, observed by Nu. Rose sees the cult knight and moves to attack, but several attackers block her, so she resolves herself to end the threat in honor of Sid. However, she is saved by a precision cut of an enemy attacker, reminding her of a distant memory, before looking up and seeing she was saved by Shadow, dropping from the roof with the real Shadow Garden members to engage the terrorists. Using the battle to cover their escape, Rose orders the students to vacate while Shadow notices the cult knight moving to a wall corner. As a terrorist attacks Shadow, he turns and finds the cult knight left through a hidden door and activates the pressurized gas system for the school's power and heating. As Sherry tries searching for her father amid the skirmish, she sees the gas lights explode from gas flooding, causing the auditorium and the rest of the school to burst into flames, much to Gamma's surprise at the cults destroying their own territory. With the barrier gone, Iris and the knight finally make a move and triage the situation, but find the terrorists are dead and the students are safe outside. Iris finds Rose and learns that once their magic was back, an organization called Shadow Garden came and killed the terrorists. Iris is shocked and asks if that was what they actually said, and Rose affirms as much, while she also notes the terrorists were also calling themselves Shadow Garden. As Rose and Iris express confusion, New informs Gamma that they retrieved the necessary articles, with only one piece of business left to address. Elsewhere, Sherry races to escape the bursting gas pipes, seeking her father, while the cult knight rummages Luther and Barnett's office to set a growing fire. Inside the office, Sid appears and wonders why Lutheran is dressed like that, compelling the cult knight to remove his helmet, revealing he is indeed Lutheran. Wondering how Sid deduced his identity, Sid states it was obvious from the moment he saw him, with Lutheran pondering if it was his walk, cough, or stance. But Sid just wonders why he did all this, as he didn't seem the type. So Lutheran explains that he once reached the top of the sword-fighting world, but his sickness easily lost him the glory he'd fought so hard to attain. When he started searching for a way to cure for his disease, he found potential in a certain artifact. He gave funding to Lucretia, Sherry's mother, for her research and eventually found the artifact he longed for, but Lucretia concluded the Eye of Avarice was too dangerous and wanted to give it to the government for safekeeping. Lutheran admits he killed Lucretia and details the method of his kill, and even though Sherry didn't see him there, she never realized it, and is continuing her mother's research. Content with the explanation, Sid wonders if Lutheran used Sherry for his selfish reasons, and the man confirmed as such. Asking if Sid is bother, the student is unsure as he strives to ensure what's important or not to him. When Lutheran asks if Sid doesn't care for Sherry and Lucretia, Sid closes the book he was reading and suggests they start before someone else comes. Sid and Lutheran then face each other, but Lutheran cuts Sid in an instant and sends him falling through the window. But Shadow comes a moment later, and having experience with strong fighters, Lutheran immediately notes that he knows he is at a disadvantage against Shadow. Not wanting to waste time, he pulls out the Eye of Avarice and the Control Unit artifact, combining them to show Shadow their true value. As he does, he starts overflowing with magical energy, feeling reborn as his skin pulls back in distortion. Lutheran then starts attacking Shadow, but Shadow easily blocks his attacks without even moving from his spot. Although Lutheran strikes with a serious lunges at Shadow, he ends up cut by him. Angered, Lutheran still continues to attack Shadow and explains that he ensured Shadow Garden would be blamed for the Academy attack, hunted by everyone. Shadow finds that hilarious, explaining that something so small won't end his organization, neither good nor evil, as they walk their own path. Shadow accepts all the guilt for all crimes, but states that such won't change anything and they will continue to do what they must. Seeing Shadow unafraid to antagonize the world, Lutheran tells him that is defined as hubris, lunging to attack. However, Shadow then disarms Lutheran and proceeds stabbing his limbs, recalling precisely how Lutheran stated he killed Sherry's mother. Shadow stabs him the same way and kills him, with Lutheran's final moment, realizing Shadow's real identity. In the moment, Sherry arrives just as Shadow is walking away, seeing her dead father and crying over his body. Seeing her, Shadow believes she is that it's better she doesn't know the truth, flying off into the night. Sometime later, Shadow is labeled as an enemy to the kingdom, and is wanted for the charges of mass murder, kidnapping, arson, and armed robbery. Gamma tells Alpha that Shadow stated he would gladly accept the guilt for all crimes, but that won't change anything and they will keep doing what they must. Alpha acknowledges his wise words, and noting that despite the guilt, the Shadow Garden's numbers, standing sentinels speak in unison that they will do what they will without hesitation. Alpha had thought they stood for righteousness, but Shadow doesn't seem to see it that way, and they must live up to his resolve. With Sherry's research and the remains of the artifacts in their possession, Alpha burns away the wanted poster and tells Gamma to assemble those available of the 7 shadows. With the extensive damage to the campus, the academy is closed for an early summer break. Sherry thanks Sid for his help the other day, telling him that she decided to study abroad in Lafkas. As it is the leading city of scientific research, Sid congratulates and wishes her the best. Sherry explains how she needs to do something, but can't at the moment with her knowledge and having no reason to stay anymore. She wished to get to know Sid better, but Sid tells her they can do that next time. Before leaving, he asks her what she needs to do, and after a moment of silence, quelling the pain, she tells him it is a secret. As they part, Sherry swears a vow as Sid continues walking. Episode 10. As the summer breaks start early due to the campus damage and most students decide to head home, Sid has nothing to do at home and decides to stay in the dorm. While avoiding his sister, Sid soon realizes he doesn't have anything to do at his dorms either. Aboard, Sid soon receives a letter from Alpha, telling him about a mission in Lindworm, so he voices to himself a cryptic phrase about the sacred land, Lindworm. Meanwhile, Gamma oversees the Mitsugoshi store opening, Delta is still sleeping, Eta is sleepwalking, and Epsilon is happy to start her day by using her slime bodysuit to present a more curvaceous figure. As she recalls how she was saved by Shadow and obtained slime magic, this allowed her to fight two fates, the cult of Diablos, and her naturally petite figure. This is due to Epsilon's envy of the other girls, such as Beta, having developed a more appealing bust. In her office, Beta is writing a novel about how Shadow saved a damsel from Xenon Griffey, but gets frustrated at how shallow the female lead's characterization is going, so she decides to get fresh air. Outside, Beta meets Epsilon, who teases Beta how Shadow has been gazing at her chest lately. While Beta doesn't believe her, Epsilon states that since they both have large busts, Beta should be aware of those sort of glances. Epsilon then teases Beta if she had not received such gazes from Shadow. As they bicker, the employees find a stray cat and New arrives to tell them that they have a new directive from Alpha. Later, Iris and Alexia visit the Royal Capital's Mitsugoshi store to prepare for Alexia's trip to the Sacred Land as a special guest for the goddess's trial. While Iris is impressed by the store's diversity of content, Alexia peruses the store's fashion. Alexia intends to use the opportunity to speak with Archbishop to investigate into dark rumors about corruption and missing orphans. Gamma arrives to greet them and introduces herself by her public alias as Luna. After explaining the reason for their visit, Alexia requests to see some special articles of clothing, despite Iris reminding her she has plenty of dresses ordered beforehand. Alexia denies such intentions, seeking something else, which won't be exactly for her but also not a gift. Luna then realizes what she means and shows her a special catalog, lingerie. While Iris and Alexia are taken aback, Luna explains the product as thong underwear, and while Iris is uncomfortable with the limited coverage, Luna explains that the underwear is appealing to menfolk. As Iris is against it, Alexia takes a liking to them, and is confident she will look good in them, thinking she has a finely shaped buttocks. As the sisters bicker over whether or not to take the product, Alexia manages to mastermind around her sister, and ends up trying and buy some. After the terrorist attack, Rose had heard of Sid's survival, and rushed to find him covered in bandages in the nurse's station. Seeing him, Rose stated he must have survived and caused a miracle by his deep love to her, and accepted his love. As he saved her, she will give him her heart, inviting Sid to travel together on a train bound for Lindworm, clinging to him. With 2 more days until they arrive, Sid feels his decision to take the train as a background character was a mistake, and he could have run there faster. Rose guesses that Sid is heading there to take on the goddess's trial, but as Sid isn't sure himself and guesses Alpha's intent, he confirms such for Rose. She then explains that those that receive the goddess's blessings may even marry a princess, and should he be victorious, she will speak with her father about him to likely petition a marriage with Sid. While she still can't tell anyone about them, Rose believes that they will have a happy future if they work hard. However, Sid misunderstands her attachment as her trying to convert him to her faith, misunderstanding that she's talking about her feelings to him. For the ensuing 2-day travel, Sid managed to avoid her missionary efforts before arriving at their destination. Reaching Lindworm, Sid sees some gift shop keychains of a sword, piercing a demon's left arm, and Rose explains it is based on the legend. Lindworm is said to be where the hero Olivier dismembered the left arm of Diablos, sealed and buried somewhere within the nearby mountains, in the ruins known as the Sanctuary. Walking around, Rose notices a signing event for her favorite author, Natsume Kafka, and joins the line being a big fan of hers. She explains how Natsume's books are so original, diverse, and imaginative that they feel like they were written by different people. As Sid examines some of her books at a shop, he sees the titles and quickly realizes they are plagiarized from his past life, assuming that someone else had reincarnated like him. Lining up to meet the author, he is surprised to see Beta as Natsume, having used his wisdom of literature to make herself famous. Sid recalls how Beta was a bookworm and she loved literature when they were younger, so he told her a few stories from his past life. He thought she was going to use them as an inspiration to come up with a cool story, but she ended up stealing them wholesale to make a profit. As Natsume autographs his book, she states how it contains all the details of the mission, as Sid is quietly disappointed in her. Citing for lunch, Rose shows her book's personalizes autograph from Natsume, much to Sid's quiet disappointment. Rose then wonders what Natsume signed for Sid's copy, but are surprised to see it's written in an ancient language. While Rose knows the basics, she can't read it, and the letters are written in a form of extreme shorthand, so she couldn't understand the meaning even if she could read them. Rose wonders why she wrote in an ancient alphabet. Sid guesses it's because it's cool, and Rose just accepts his answer, surprised men were into that sort of thing. At the Lindworm Church, Alpha contemplates aloud how the time has come to learn the truth, curious what did the hero Olivier really do in the sanctuary. As the more they research, the more fact mingles with fiction. Alpha sees the deceased Archbishop Drake impales atop the statue of Olivier. She wonders what he was hiding, that the cult of Diablos would even kill a man of his high status. Alpha awaits tomorrow as the doors into the sanctuary will open and provide the answers she seeks. With the body now discovered, a still hidden Alpha takes her leave as guards are called to secure the scene. Elsewhere, Sid is eating ice cream atop a vantage point, adding commentary to the church bells, and notices a cloaked man running on rooftops. Following the assassin, he attacks Sid only to be easily blocked by an ice cream scoop. Directing the assassin's gaze upward, Epsilon arrives and kills the man with precision, with Sid complimenting her skill immediately after. As Epsilon tells Sid that the target was eliminated by the cult's executioner, they got his henchman while the executioner has gone into hiding. They will be moving to Plan B as Sid informs her that he will be proceeding with his own plans. Taking his leave and blending into the crowd, Sid thinks how Epsilon is such a proud woman, as evident by the amount of slime she wears. Episode 11. At a Mitsugoshi hotel in Lindworm, Sid recounts how he has things he likes and things he doesn't like, and one thing he likes is hot springs. Unexpectedly, Alexia is already there, and while initially flustered, she sees he hasn't looked at her, and calms down to apologize for slashing him. As Sid wonders why she is in Lindworm, Alexia explains that she is a special guest for the goddess trial. Alexia asks Sid the same question, as he answers a friend invited him, telling him there was a fun event, and guesses the goddess trial is the event. Alexia elaborates how the goddess's trial is an annual fighting ritual, where ancient warriors are awakened from the sanctuary to compete against modern challenges. Hearing Sid's curiosity, Alexia tells him that one needs to request participation in advance and that the ancient warriors only answer the call of the few challengers they deem worthy. As hundreds test their luck annually, only about 10 actually get to battle, as the wandering swordsman Venom managed to summon Olivier a few years ago, but still lost. Alexia continues how she isn't there to fight, but to audit the Archbishop, who was found murdered. Alexia tries to tease more information as classified, and recommends Sid join the Crimson Knights so she can tell him more about it, but Sid isn't interested. Adding some stretches and posturing herself, Alexia expected Sid to be ogling her, but finds he isn't even looking. Sid notes that he tends to not look at people at hot springs, so that everyone feels more comfortable while bathing. Although he would appreciate if she stops glancing at his Excalibur, Alexia retorts that Excalibur is more of a mere worm. However, Sid stands up to state that she shouldn't judge a book by its cover, shocking Alexia and retorting that what she thought was a worm was a sword still contained in its sheath. As Alexia struggles to wonder what he means, Sid exits the bath and slaps himself with the towel, espousing that when the holy sword is unsheathed, its sparkling blade is set free to set off on a quest. Sid leaves Alexia puzzled and alone, standing soon after to replicate the towel trick he demonstrated. The new acting Archbishop, Jack Nelson, cancels the audit with Alexia by explaining that she was there, investigating the previous Archbishop, and now the church will be investigating his murder. Alexia leaves angered, knowing that the key evidence will be destroyed before she can receive approval from the king. At Lindworm's Coliseum, the goddess trial is commencing, with Rose and Alexia seated next to Beta in her Natsume Kafta personality. Seeing her person and acting, Alexia is annoyed at how well-liked Natsume is and believes those like her are the most corrupt on the inside. Concurrently, Beta gets cheers from the crowd with her attire, and looks at Alexia with a sneer of superiority, secretly annoyed how she used Sid and also believes Alexia is corrupt on the inside. As Natsume waves to the crowd, Alexia stomps on her foot while smiling like nothing happened, fueling a new antagonism for the two. With the welcome ceremony complete, Nelson activates a hidden switch to activate the barrier. Once the trial starts, the first contender is from Oriana Kingdom, top batteries. Two people from the audience sitting behind Sid explain that you can't leave the barrier around the arena until either a contestant or summoned warrior is defeated. With a hefty participation fee and the likelihood you may even get killed, it seems worth it should you win and get a commemorative medal, which will easily let you join any knight order in the world. Although Top challenges a warrior, none answer and his turn is over. After him comes next in line from the Midra Knight order, but none answer him as well. Sid really wants to go with Shadow and show his skills, making people wonder who he is. Next, still ain't happenin' from the Lafkas Vigilante Corps comes forth, but he and many more subsequent challengers are unable to summon anyone. Sid contemplates playing a weakling to win a tournament undetected, before realizing he hasn't seen Alva since he arrived. Across Lindworm, Shadow Garden members infiltrate the populace and survey the city in preparation for their mission. Come sunset, Alpha rendezvous with Epsilon, their time is now and they move. After nightfall, Sid is getting bored, and hopes the trial ends soon as the only contender to summon anybody was Anaros. In that moment, the announcer reveals the next challenger is from the Midra Academy for Dark Knights, Sid Kage. The bored Sid initially dismisses the name, sounding like a background character, before he realizes that's his name. As Nelson is impressed a student would make the attempt, Natsum is befuddled in surprise, while Rose is revealed to have done so to show off Sid's worth. Sid wonders how he should come out, considering the ancient warriors are usually matching the strength of the challenger, possibly revealing he is quite strong. But if he refuses and if the academy finds out, he may get expelled and wonders what his sister would say. So, Sid decides to use option 3. As Sid is a no-show and Nelson isn't surprised, Sid creates a distracting light above the arena and then jumps in as Shadow. Sid elects option 3 and confuse the matter, making people forget about Sid as they're fixated on Shadow. As Nelson makes preparations to apprehend him, Shadow channels his magic and the sanctuary automatically conjures a door. A mysterious wound then appears after Shadow, shocking Jack as he didn't activate any summons, and Natsum recognizes the woman as Aurora, the Witch of Calamity. However, with minimal information about her due to the chaos and destruction that came after her, Natsum asks Jack if he disclose more about Aurora. Falling for her feminine wiles, Jack states Aurora's name is known to a select few, even in the church. Nelson finished that Shadow is unfortunate to summon her, as she is the most powerful witch in all of history. Alexia disagrees, stating that if the sanctuary summoned Aurora as a worthy opponent, then Shadow's powers must have reached the level of one capable of destroying the world. As Shadow and Aurora face each other, the smile and excitement, with Shadow seeing she feels a battle is a conversation between opponents. Aurora does a slight dance motion, conjuring streams of blood to attack Shadow, astonishing the crowd as they both enjoy their battle. While Nelson maintains Shadow is at a loss, Natsum claims Aurora has yet to land a hit with her spears, asking Alexia for confirmation. Alexia does corroborate, noting how no ordinary Dark Knight can manage against her, but Shadow is still observing her and dodging her attacks. As Shadow is enjoying himself, thankful Violet has given him the first decent conversation he's had in a good long while, he sees that she is restricted from using her full power. Ashamed she's hindered, Shadow then defeats Aurora with a single slash, much to her own joy, fighting him before disappearing into light. Shadow wishes he could have fought her at her full strength before leaving, shocking everyone that he won. But to everyone's surprise, Nelson included, the barrier then breaks, and a magic door appears in the middle of the arena. A magic seal expands across the whole of the city, with Alpha and Delta observing the spell. Episode 12. As the red glow of the sanctuary door illuminates Lindworm, Sid stands atop the dam and feels he did well, hoping people will talk about Shadow and forget about Sid Kage. Thinking about going to a hot springs next, a magical door then appears next to Sid atop the water. Despite his efforts and realizing he won't be able to escape it, Sid decides to enter. As another door appeared in the middle of the arena, Nelson wonders why the sanctuary responded to Shadow, explaining to the princesses that the door appears to those who are worthy to pass through it. When Alexia recounts hearing of the door to the sanctuary being in the cathedral, Nelson clarifies that the door doesn't refer to a physical entry, but rather changes shape and location at will. He adds that there are 3 doors based on those who seek it and those who are worthy: a forbidding door, a beckoning door, and a welcoming door. As Nelson moves to dismiss Alexia and the rest, Shadow Garden appears. Seeing the door start to open, Nelson orders the citizens be removed and declares the trial cancelled. Led by Alpha, she asks Alexia and Rose to behave until the door is closed, taking Delta and a small contingent into the door. As Epsilon had defeated Nelson's guards, she orders the princesses to stay as she takes Nelson into the sanctuary. Kai and Omega take him and Ms. Natsume hostage, but Alexia considers leaving her to her fate as Epsilon quietly agrees with her seeing Beta's assets. Once Alpha's squad enter, Nelson calls his guard Venom to kill Epsilon. But when Venom attempts to cut Epsilon, she bends to dodges the slash only for him to cut her fake slime breasts. Not wanting to be exposed, an enraged Epsilon reattaches them and quickly defeats Venom faster than anyone present can witness. Upon questioning if Nelson saw anything, the frightened Archbishop states he saw nothing, with Rose and Alexia are confused since she moved too fast to be seen. Epsilon then grabs him by the face and jumps in as Shadow Garden members take Beta as hostage. Seeing the door start to close, Alexia and Rose jump in as well. Inside the sanctuary, Alexia and Rose are transported to where Alpha is, landing atop Beta as Alexia states she tripped and fell into the door. As Alpha doesn't care, she tells her that it's fine if she also learns. As Shadow Garden study the sanctuary, Alpha explains that this is where the left arm of Diablos was sealed after Olivier defeated it, and they came to learn more about the cult of Diablos. Knowing Nelson won't talk, Alpha brings their attention to a statue of the hero Olivier, surprising the girls that it's an elf woman despite the public understanding being Olivier was a man. As Shadow Garden has a general grasp of facts, knows the true history, and the cult's real objective, Alpha reveals she has the same face as Olivier. A panicked Nelson realizes she was a possessed elf, exclaiming she wasn't compatible and should be dead, but Epsilon notes how he does know about them. Alpha states they know the truth behind Olivier and the possessed, suspecting that the cult's true goal isn't just reviving the demon, and states that they'll proceed to see for themselves. Alpha activates the big door, opening it as lights flood the room, and the memory of Olivier stands beside her. Elsewhere, Sid enters a white void room where Aurora is held and wonders if she summoned him. While Aurora states she doesn't think she summoned him, she does notes that they had a fun fight, thinking him the strongest of anyone in her incomplete memories. She wonders how Sid came to be here, and he explains a door showed up, followed him, so he relented and entered. Sid asks how they can leave, but Aurora states she has no memories of ever leaving, explaining there was simply her just woken up and she was simply there, and that had never happened before. While Sid decides to retrace his steps, Aurora stops him to ask what she is wearing and if he can help her. After Sid notes its straitjacket, he guesses she didn't put it on for training, like he used to do long ago. Once he frees her, and since they have the same goal of leaving, Aurora requests they should work together. She explains she knows how to free herself, but the sanctuary is a memory prison created from ancient battles, so they need to go to its center and destroy its magical core to be set free. Aurora also notes that they can't use magic, as it will be absorbed by the sanctuary's core, with Sid seeing such with his own magic. However, Sid is unbothered as he is reliable at breaking stuff, with Aurora gleeful to have a gallant knight to protect her. As he wonders what she will do once she is free, Aurora states she will vanish into nothing. As Alpha and her group explore the memories, they come upon a technologically advanced research laboratory within the dam, explaining that these are the memories of the hero Olivier locked away. Long ago, the cult gathered orphan children and used them for experiments, with most of them dying while a small group of girls survived. Meanwhile, Sid and Aurora come upon a memory of young Aurora crying, but as they need to end the memory so as to move forward. To do so, Aurora slaps her younger self to end the memory, telling her that crying won't change anything, and soon the memory shatters. Alva continues how Olivier was one of the few compatible children implanted with Diablo cells, the cult's experiment to implant demon cells into children. Nelson argues they didn't have a choice as they needed power to fight the demon. While Olivier did indeed sever the demon's left arm, Alpha elaborates that everything they are seeing are just bygone memories, which fade to be replaced by new ones. Proceeds, as seen when the present ruins are intermittently seen within the memory. Once Olivier matured, the fairy tale claimed she was given a mission to vanquish the demon, when she was really sent to extract new cells from Diablos. Olivia remained obedient in the belief that her mission would lead to people living in peace, while the cult held another objective. After the memory transitions to a battlefield, Alpha narrates that no matter how many parts she cut, the demon still lived, with the dismembered pieces still killing the cult's researchers who came near it. The cult used powerful artifacts to immobilize the left arm and gained more Diablo cells, creating the red pill's alpha presence to the group, which Alexia recalls Xenon Griffey using. But the powerful side effects not what the cult wanted, as the memory shatters to take them to the left arm, so grand in size, it had to be stored in a silo. While Nelson is offended, she would expose the truth in front of the princesses. Alva draws their attention to the secret Nelson wanted to hide. The cult was able to make pills that would grant tremendous power with an ageless body, to which Alpha points to the man in the memory as Nelson, who is forced to reveal the drug is called the Beads of Diablos. However, Alpha states it had two flaws, one of which Alexia interjects to claim the flaw is hair loss since the past Nelson had hair. Yet present Nelson denies that, as he lost his hair due to stress from being surrounded by idiots, who made him do all the work since he has a mortal body. Alexia apologizes, and Alpha continues that the first flaw is that the beads need to be taken at regular intervals of once a year or the effects wear off. The second flaw is that they can only produce small amounts, which Nelson reveals they can make 12 annually. Alpha rhetorically asks if it's coincidence that the cult's leadership, that contain only 12 members. Alexia again recalls Xenon, who aimed to be the new 12th seat in rounds. But as they have not perfected the beads, the cult continued production of the beads by using the demon's arm and experimenting on the hero's descendants with Olivier's blood. Alpha asks Nelson to answer if she is correct, exposing him as the 11th of the rounds. While Nelson confirms as such, as every member wants that power, he confirms he is one of the chosen knights, Nelson the Avaricious. Although he buffs himself with his magic, Delta nonchalantly stabs him from behind and throws him down into the water. While Delta smiles at a good hunt, Epsilon reminds her she was supposed to wait until after they got all their intel, to which Delta fervently apologizes to Alpha. While her pack leader tells her to stop, she also repeats what she often reminds Delta, always make sure your prey is actually dead. A maniacal Nelson then rises from the water in a mutated physiology, breaking the memory to use the sanctuary's security system to bring Alpha, Delta, Beta, and the princesses to a white void. Elsewhere, Epsilon and her squad are in another part of the sanctuary's memories, while Nelson uses the space to multiply himself to punish the interlopers. However, Delta charges and happy to hunt again. Episode 13. Trapped in a white room, Delta easily cuts down Nelson's copies, but soon feels something is wrong. Nelson explains that the closer they are to the center of the sanctuary, the more of their power is drained, to which Alpha deduces that Nelson gains power closer to the center. While Nelson was hoping to get closer to the core, he feels getting this close is enough to be able to defeat them. However, Delta is happy just to be able to hunt so many prey. After walking through a black void to reach another memory, Sid and Aurora arrive to a battlefield with many casualties. Sid falls headfirst and cushions Aurora's fall, commenting how she's heavy, and she retorts he's imagining that. They find young Aurora crying again, and Aurora takes Sid's sword, wanting to kill her to end the memory. However, as she gets close, the dead spring up to start attacking them, but Sid rescues Aurora, as Sid notes this must some antivirus reaction, as Aurora explains that the sanctuary is rejecting them. Sid wonders what will happen if Aurora dies. She guesses she will return in the first room where they met, both agreeing that sounds obnoxious. Within the memories of the sanctuary, Epsilon's group find a sick person, with Kai and Omega moving to defense. However, Epsilon moves towards her and they phase through Epsilon to reveal the person she once was before disappearing. Epsilon then explains that it's similar to the goddess's trial, as she probably was a memory that reacted to them and materialized. With her squad confused, Epsilon clarifies she means the possessed, each recalling their darker days. They later find an archive with information about the possessed, realizing this could have happened to them, too, if they didn't meet Shadow. Finding more than originally considered, Kai thinks they won't need to keep coming back for information, as they have Ada's new Mitsugoshi Company product, the instant cameras, based on Shadow's wisdom. As they take pictures of the information, they note the Sanctuary Core's effect on their magic is partly destabilizing their uniforms, like what happened at the Academy 3. While Kai and Omega are fine controlling their magic, Epsilon's slime breasts fall off, and she reattaches them, with nobody seeing anything. While Sid and Aurora are easily defeating the zombies, but Sid is easily handling himself, explaining to Aurora that he's been bodybuilding since he was a boy. As more keep coming and will likely do so indefinitely, Sid apologizes as he has to kill the young Aurora to end the memory. The two then reach the center of the sanctuary, finding a heavily chained door behind an ornate magical sword of great importance just before the door. Meanwhile, despite ongoing power loss, Delta is obliterating the Nelson clones, confounding the original as she should be on limited magical power by now. Seeing her barely struggle, Nelson asks if she is awakened, despite the technique necessary to accomplish that being lost, only for Alpha to rebuttal if it really was, frightening Nelson to see more clones slain. Unleashing his full power and amassing 100 more clones, Nelson's confidence evaporates upon seeing Delta charge up her iron slab sword, used like a wide hammer to multi-kill the clones. As Aurora tells Sid that they need to destroy the magic core on the other side of the sealed door. Sid's initial idea to cut the chains is rejected and Aurora notes there should be a key, clearly the ornate sword with inscription that it can cut the chains. Looking at it, Sid is sure he won't be able to remove the sword, as his attempted removal actually sinks into the stone, stating it must be drawn out by the Chosen One. Aurora then sees a sign stating that the Holy Sword can only be drawn by direct descendants, surprised that Sid managed to decipher the magical inscription that fast. While Sid's efforts left some cracks in the sword's hilt, he states he is well versed in all the standard formulas, surprising Aurora that he memorized all of the countless magical script's encryption patterns. With no other way to open the door nor an alternative path, the two then sit down and waiting. Watching Delta fight Nelson, Alexia, Rose, and Beta come to pity the cultist. Alexia even wonders if Delta really is working with Shadow, explaining that Delta's fighting style is totally different from Shadow's sophisticated techniques, with Delta only using unbridled violence. As Delta defeats more Nelson clones, the memory breaks to return them to their starting point, and Nelson is surprised she managed to defeat over 100 copies without even breaking a sweat. Deducing he was a scientist once, Alva states that even if he could create 100 copies, they all still have one brain and he couldn't control them all that well. In a panic, Nelson then sees Olivier's statue and summons her memory. However, Epsilon's party reunites with Alpha's group having finished with the investigation and they can now leave. Nelson is surprised that they are just running away, but Alpha explains that their objective was to cut off the source of power and they now know how the sanctuary defenses work. Thus, Shadow Garden will visit again, but at a time of their choosing. As Shadow Garden begins their exit, Alpha had to bring a snarling Delta to heal to comply. Offered an exit as well, Beta goads Alexia to taking the exit. Once alone, Nelson got a good look at Alpha, scheming to take her blood, so they can perfect the beads. Wondering what to say to the rest of the cult, he thinks he can claim he lured them into a trap to expose their identities, but gets a notification that someone is in the sanctuary center. While he initially thinks he can let off steam, he has a flashback to Delta's massacre and orders Olivier to follow. Still waiting for something, Sid asks Aurora what she meant by she wants to disappear, so she explains that she'll be set free once the sanctuary core is destroyed, as it is a prison of memories that repeats into eternity. Sid accepts her answer and requests she wait a bit more to let things work out. Recalling story formulas, Sid expects the protagonist to show up and pull the sword. However, Nelson appears and Sid wonders if it's a scenario where the bad guy arrives first to stop the protagonist. Although Sid sees Olivier has the same face as Alpha, he dismisses the though before Nelson notes Sid freed Aurora. But she can't recall him as her memories are incomplete. Nelson sends Olivier to attack as Sid goes to face her, knowing that she is quite strong. As Olivier attacks Sid, he blocks her attacks, even though she sends him flying everywhere and ends up breaking his sword. Yet as Nelson wonders why Sid is smiling, Sid realizes he is indeed smiling. Olivier attacks again and injures Sid's shoulder, but Sid is unfazed and finds Olivier is just a mindless shell. Nelson questions how Sid is still alive, as Sid notes that a battle without a conversation is tedious, that Olivier doesn't have a heart so she isn't answering any of his questions. Nelson doesn't understand what he is talking about and orders Olivier to finish him off. But Aurora interjects begging Sid to stop, knowing that no human can defeat Olivier, despite her uncertainty knowing the fact. She tells Sid he's done enough and gave her more new memories that she could have asked, wanting him to stop and willing to solve the rest on her own. Nelson laughs at her, noting that she's helpless without magic, but he barters to spare Sid if she agrees to help him, needing her to return to schedule with the cult's plans. But Sid interrupts them, stating that he doesn't need help, and they shouldn't assume he will lose. Enraged, Nelson forgoes any promises and orders Olivier to kill him, flanking and stab Sid. While Aurora is in shock and Nelson grins, Sid opens the right eye he has had closed since he found Aurora, stating that he got Olivier, as magic circuit lines flare, magic unaffected by the core. Episode 14. As Olivier stabs Sid through his abdomen, he smiles that he got her and grabs Olivier to bite into her neck, ripping it open for a fatal victory, and defeats her. A dumbfounded Nelson wonders how Sid is still alive after being stabbed, as Sid explains that, if you protect your vital organs and arteries, it's easy to survive a stabbing. As the method brings in your foe, it puts Sid in a position to use a nearly inescapable counterattack, even if he's bleeding profusely from the gut. Nelson is in shock, thinking Sid is practically insane for trying such a method, and is approached by Sid, thinking he'll be fighting Nelson next. As Sid continues channeling his magic through himself, Nelson feigns surrender before explaining that, thought he is surprised to see Olivier getting defeated by a kid with no magic. But as she was but a copy of Olivier, Nelson mocks Sid for thinking he won, as Sid reciprocates the mockery. With the amount of magic in the sanctuary center, Nelson summons countless copies of Olivier, sending. While several attack Sid, he apologizes as he opens his right eye to defeat them using his magic and slime sword and cloak. A startled Nelson asks how he is able to use magic, as Sid explains that he just tempered the magic until it was too solid to be absorbed by the core. It took him some time, but it was something rather simple to him, despite confusing Aurora. Knowing such is not possible for a normal human being, Nelson frantically orders the Olivier copies to kill him. While Sid fights them and comparing them to scarecrows, as his wound continues to bleed, so he declares playtime is over. Recounting the steps to open the door, Sid decides to break the seal and defeat all copies at once, as it yields the same results. Enveloping the sanctuary in his magical radius, Aurora is astonished anyone could have so much magical power, as he starts casting his ultimate spell, I am the all-range atomic. Stabbed by one of the Oliviers in the heart, Sid is unaffected and finishes his spell. The explosion obliterates all Oliviers, the sword, the chain door, Nelson, and everything else within the sanctuary. Outside, the seven shadows gaze in bewilderment as their leader's magic reaches skyward to illuminate the early twilight sky, as the city of Lindworm is flooded by the displaced water from the dam. In the nearby forest, Alexia, Midra, and Rose Oriana stare in bafflement at the sight of a pillar of energy. In a black void, Sid finds himself with the demon's left arm, approaching him before he wakes up in the morning with Aurora's spirit by his side. She is surprised that he survived even being stabbed in the heart, but Sid explains that he used magic to move his heart to the side to avoid a fatal blow. Sid acknowledges he is extremely tired now, with Aurora amazed he is full of surprises. Seeing that she is starting to disappear, she confesses that she was the one that called him into the sanctuary and lied for other things as well, but Sid is fine with it. Aurora confides that she wanted to fade away into nothing for so long and forget everything, but she now has one memory she doesn't want to forget, and thanks Sid. He also thanks her, stating he had a good time too. Before completely disappearing, Aurora tells Sid what to do if he ever met the real her. Once she fades, Sid takes his leave. Elsewhere, Alexia, Rose, and Natsume Kafka, Beta, contemplate the aftermath of Shadow's spell, but Alexia feels frustrated at being weak and unable to do anything, asking if Rose feels the same. Initially thinking she accepted being powerless, Alexia realizes there's more to what is happening and was unable to discern who is right or wrong, trapped as a spectator. Meanwhile, the citizens in Lindworm concentrate on roofs or traverse in gondolas as the church knights mobilize disaster relief. Alexia realizes that if she does nothing, then she'll lose all she cares about before knowing the danger that takes them. Rose concurs with her own feelings, thinking how there have been huge organizations working in the shadows at war with each other since the Academy attack, but nothing is known about either. Beta asks if Alexia has any ideas or plans, to which Alexia suggests they start a connection between the three of them, looking for any information. But as Beta asks what she'd do with the information, Alexia's half-hearted uncertain doesn't inspire confidence as they have no precise plan. However, both Rose and Beta agree to form a team, regardless, and pool their resources, or as Beta deems it, the hero, wise woman, and deadweight. In flooded Lindworm, Kai and Omega ferry a gondola with Epsilon reporting to Alpha that the sanctuary had been obliterated. With the holy sword vaporized alongside the magical core and Nelson dead, Alpha notes that this particular situation was the simplest and the most effective solution, praising Shadow as Epsilon finds only he could have accomplished such an outcome, as Alpha states that his path is also Thier's. Epsilon also reports how Beta is working with the princesses, likely to infiltrate their inner circles if she plays her cards right. Finishing her report, Epsilon also confirms that their theory about Aurora was correct, as she had another name, the Demon Diablos. As Alpha reaches her own conclusion regarding Shadow, she tells Epsilon that their next performance is the Midra-Royal Capital. While Epsilon wonders if she should report to Shadow, Alpha tells her it's not needed, as he knows everything. The Shadow Garden executives then vanish without a notice. Back in the Midra-Royal Capital, Nobleman Rude of the Velgulta Empire is meeting with Mitsugoshi Company, President Ms. Luna, Gamma, to open a second shopping center within his domain. While Gamma understands, she reminds him that Mitsugoshi is contributing to reconstruction of the disaster in the Sacred Lands. As he argues the prime property, she counters that it is still on the market despite the affordable price. But Rude argues that is precisely why they need a store out there, as even he has heard of Mitsugoshi within his outskirt domain, still petitioning she buy prime property in Madlid. As he continues his sales pitch with a discount and more, News steps in to update Gamma that they found and confirmed a petroleum reservoir in Rude's domain. Concluding his petition, Rude is surprised when a pleased Gamma decides to buy every property on that street. Gamma clarifies to the flummoxed Rude that she wants to redevelop the city, and should he accept their terms, Mitsugoshi will make Madlid the greatest city in Velgulta Empire. As Gamma asks about expanding the tributaries of the Nile River, New orders her staff to begin buying property along the Nile River, commanding they ready themselves for the real estate bubble to come. Meanwhile, Zeta continues an expedition into an Arctic region, met by curious penguins, as Ada sleeps after designing an airship. At their Mitsugoshi HQ office, Beta inquires Delta's location, as they believe she's still in the Sacred Land, but decide to leave her alone as she will return home when she gets cold. As Epsilon plays the piano, Alpha sees her Shadow Garden compatriots enjoying their time in from the rain, recalling to an earlier time with Sid. Back when it was just the original 7, they had made their original base of operation from a small house based on Sid's teachings on wood frame construction. With a home to stay in, Alpha was ready to begin training the other girls to face the cult, and each needed to enhance their individual strengths. Sid agreed to share a portion of his wisdom to ensure they achieved their convictions, thinking young girls living on their own would need self-defense techniques. As Alpha returns from nostalgia, Gamma relays received news that Oriona's royal chancellor, Purvasat, will be visiting the Midra-Royal Capital. At a royal capital Mitsugoshi hot spring, Alexia finishes explaining to Iris that Archbishop Drake and Nelson were part of the cult. To be able to keep the sanctuary a secret, they would need an organization with considerable public influence. But while Alexia wants to investigate the divine teachings and hope to tie the recent revelation to the incident at the Capitol, for Iris had suggested the same thing to their father, King Klaus, but he denied them. Per his usual passive policies, and due to King Raphael Oriana visiting for the upcoming Bushin Festival, King Klaus doesn't want to instigate anything with the church without clear evidence. However, Iris feels that if she wins the Bushin Festival again, then she will have more backing and support from the people, hopefully forcing their father to listen. Alexia voices concern, asking what if the cult or Shadow Garden will get involved, but Iris is sure of her sword skills regardless of whatever artifacts they may have. While Alexia tries to warn her that both factions have more than simple artifacts, Iris rationalizes the massive explosion 5 was from an artifact, as no single human has that much power. Iris also knows she saw them send an artifact out of control, and will not run from her duties as first princess, despite Alexia's warnings. Remembering Alexia's trek to Lindworm, Iris wonders why Alexia went into the sanctuary. She didn't authorize her to do anything aside from auditing the Archbishop, but Alexia plays dumb with feigning lightheadedness, excuses herself to the cold water bath. Alone, Iris fears that her Crimson Order Knights probably won't be able to rebuild after losing their strongest members so early. She feels the once supportive Knight Order likely hate her now, taking their strongest members and letting them die, leading Marco Granger to visit Glenn's grave. A somber Iris feels that she just needs to win the tournament and show the knights a path to prove her trustworthiness. Just then, Iris hears a towel snap from the other bath before a second snap is heard a moment later. Elsewhere in the capital, Rose is training her fencing, trying to emulate the motion she saw from Shadow's rescue at the academy and another time long before. But as she readies her stance, she feels strange pain and discovers a red growth appearing on her chest. Episode 15. At noon atop the clock tower, Sid uses his eminent sense to hear various background extras give exposition regarding the Bushin Festival, reminding Sid of what he must do. As the festival is an international and interracial contest of strength, Sid must accomplish one of his bucket list's top items, to act weak but defeat his opponents to shock the crowd with how strong he is. Sid aims to play the dark horse that wins, while being underestimated, aiming to ride the big wave that has come to town. At Mitsugoshi HQ, Gamma heads to the throne room, and is met by a surprise visit from Sid. After getting cleaned by her attendants following another stumble, Sid asks her to help him with a disguise to enter the Bunshin Festival, to which Sid states he can't tell her when she asks why. Once her staff amass a trove of items, Ada readies a machine as Gamma explains the process of how to create a realistic face mask shaped however he would want it. After Gamma applies the special slime gel, New shows him pictures of different faces catalogued, and Sid notes he wants to look weak much to her confusion, as Ada is carted off. Gamma suggests Mundane Man as he was a lazy, dark knight with no skill, disowned by his noble parents, who died in remarkable and undiscovered death. Enjoying his backstory and similar bone structure, Sid agrees, and Kai powers the machine via pedal generator to be turned into Mundane. With his new face applied, Sid changes his posture to look like his new character, and alters his voice to be unrecognizable to his real self. Gamma offers a variety of cheap, second-hand items to dress his new persona with, but trips on nothing and falls to the bottom of the stairs with another nosebleed. In the capital, other contestants spot Anarose Nixen, who summoned an ancient warrior at the goddess's trial. She sees Sid as mundane with cheap gear and a sickly body, advising him that as he is an amateur he should not participate in the Bunshin Festival. Mundane tells her to not judge a book by its cover and that he doesn't need her help. He walks away smiling that his disguise works. He is immediately accosted by Quentin, telling him to take her advice as he fought in several Bunshin festivals, advising weaklings like Mundane how it's better if he just go home. Sid plays his mundane persona to state that he is at least stronger than Quentin, angering him to pick up and brutalize him into an alley. Mundane still states Quentin is weak, angering him into a raging goon as Sid contemplates how the melee combat of the world is unsophisticated, thinking of numerous counters to Quentin's assault. But as he has no intention of fighting just yet, he lets Quentin beat him up. Although Quentin talks a big game, Anarose admonishes him to stop lest she intervene, so Quentin ceases and leaves. She apologizes to Mundane, and while she could have stopped the fight sooner, she decided to let Quentin beat him up so that he could quit and not get injured in the festival. As Mundane comments he's fine, having tasted his blood after some time, Anarose is surprised that he isn't hurt. She introduces herself and Sid introduces his pseudonym, Mundane Man. Later, Sid stands in line to apply as Mundane, muttering to himself as he gestures theatrically as he continues on about his plan to himself before answering his call to apply. Sid meets with Skell Adele for lunch at McDonald's, as Skell wants to win some money through betting on tournament outcomes. Explaining that the preliminaries are first and only the strongest will proceed to the main tournament, Skell tells Sid the favorites to win. However, Sid is deep in thought as he wants to show his powers only at the end, wondering how to defeat the stronger opponents without revealing his powers. Asking Skell the most likely to win, Iris Midra is the favorite as she's looking to be the first repeat winner in ages, but there's also Rose with buzz, being she might be the first Bushin champion from Oriana Kingdom. As Skell requests funds for wagers, Sid distracts him with a souvenir from Lindworm, countering that Skell doesn't need money if he's so sure he'll win. Sid orders 3 sandwiches to go. Outside, Sid thinks over the fights with the favorites and how he'd have to win those before he has a surprise encounter with Rose. Seeing he went to McDonald's Tuna King shop, she explains she went with Alexia and Natsum Kafka the other day for some good food. Rose discloses that she is going to meet her father as he will be introducing her fiancé copyright sign, Pervashat, a name both acknowledge as cringe. Rose explains that she is princess to the land of art and culture, but disappointed the expectations of many upon deciding to become a knight, following her inspiration after a young boy rescued her as a child, and was inspired by him to pick up the sword. She still refuses to abandon her ideals, and that may cause her to betray more people, so she asks Sid if he will keep believing in her, and Sid affirms he will. Rose thanks him, and Sid gives her a tuna king sandwich as she leaves, advising her to relax a little. During the next morning's prelim match, Sid and Skell are watching, as Skell explains that he is gathering data to make better bets. He continues to explain how he can calculate the odds, but still needs some money to make the odds 100%. Sid ignores him, but Goldie Gilded shows behind Skell, having found him fascinating as Skell excitedly recognizes him. Goldie explains he also tabulates data to help him win. When the next match is Gonzalez Macomb vs Mundane Man, Sid leaves needing to take a dump, and Golda analyzes the fight to explains how you can get general idea of a fighter's strength beforehand. As Gonzalez has a glint in his eyes, an arrogant smile, and large figure from heavy musculature, this means he is an experienced tough fighter, and Goldie quantifies his battle power at 1,364. Conversely, Goldie sees Mundane Man as astoundingly inept, wondering how he even made it to the third round. With his weak face, build, and aura, Goldie tabulates his battle power at a measly 33. Although Golda expects Gonzalez to win in less than a second, and Skell is impressed with the analysis, Gonzalez falls down the second after the fight starts, and onlookers assume Gonzalez tripped and fell. Thus, Mundane is announced as winner, which disappoints the crowd, while Anaro saw how Mundane landed 2 quick punches on Gonzalez's chin. Despite the wrong outcome, Goldie acts like he knew this outcome of Mundane winning, and tells Skell that you can win by betting on those with higher battle power, or find the weak ones to bet on their opponents. In tomorrow's 4th match, Mundane will be facing Goldie, who leaves just as Sid returns, and Skell begs him to give over all of his life savings, so bet on Goldie, but Sid refuses. Looking into the crowd, Sid smiles, noticing Anaris's reaction, saying she thinks Mundane's win wasn't a fluke, as Sid continues to refuse Skull's begging for money. Early the following morning, Skell fervently knocks on Sid's door and shows him the newspaper stating that Rose stabbed her fiancé copyright sign, per Vassat, before she ran away. Staring at her picture in the newspaper, Sid asks himself why would she do it. Episode 16. As Alexia and Natsume Kafka Beta look at Rose's situation, they track her movements to the north of the royal capital. The Oriana Kingdom wants to handle the matter themselves as a domestic matter, asking Midra Kingdom to not interfere, to which both Alexia and Beta agree someone is pulling strings. Since Vassat is a son to an Oriana Kingdom's duke, Rose will be in serious trouble, but not face a death penalty due to her royal status. Knowing her father will take a wait-and-see attitude, Alexia wants to find Rose in order to hear her side of the story, but Beta guesses that Rose may not have told them anything to avoid the possibility of trouble between the kingdoms. Although Beta clarifies she wants to consider the next move carefully, Alexia takes her comment to mean she is thoughtless, getting physical with Beta, thinking she's playing innocent and calling her acting obvious. While Alexia understands, she is still angry, as they are sworn allies, and gets upset with Beta over the thought of abandoning Rose. Beta will try gathering some more information on Vassat, while Alexia goes to ask her sister for advice, leaving with an observation at how nothing seems to faze Natsume. After Alexia leaves, Beta orders one of her subordinate numbers to feed more intel on Vassat, which will keep Alexia occupied, taking more time to process and think, thus staying out of trouble. As Shadow Garden cannot afford the princess to run headfirst into trouble, they must distract her with what she wants. Asking an update on their surveillance of Rose Oriana, Beta is informed that Rose made it through the sewers and into the underground ruins, hiding amid the complex tunnel network. Beta orders continued monitoring no matter how small, reading Rose's physical actions in the report sounding like possession. During another match, Sid is in the audience reading the newspaper about Rose stabbing her fiancé copyright sign, impressed by her actions. Next to him, Skeletal feeds his gambling addiction after the current fight ends with a loss for him. Wondering what to do next, he decides to continue his role as the Eminence in Shadow to play the Shadow War amid a grand tournament. Heading to prepare for his next fight, Sid encounters the war goddess Beatrix, who smells the scent of elf on Sid and wonders if he knows an elf. Sid confirms he has a few elven friends, and Beatrix explains she is looking for the daughter of her late sister, wondering if Sid had seen someone that looks like her. Sid is immediately reminded of Alpha but denies it. So Beatrix tests Sid by drawing her sword to cut Sid's head, while he realizes that she intends to stop before reaching him, and acts as a background character, playing he's shocked by what just happened. Seeing his reaction, Beatrix then apologizes, stating thought he was stronger, but it seems she is mistaken. Helping him up, Beatrix's grasp of his hand predicts he will be a strong warrior someday, bidding farewell as Sid acknowledges to himself that she is quite strong. After the round where Amatri Nautilus wins, Inaros is met by Quentin, guessing she is observing Mundane Man, just like yesterday. Asking her thoughts on his fight, that while the consensus is his opponent supposedly tripped and lost, Quentin is sure that Mundane did something but couldn't see. He is sure that Anaros can explain it, and Anaros explains she couldn't see at all, but didn't expect to see someone faster than her eyes can follow, as she only saw his right hand move before the fight ended. Quentin surmises he was wrong, having thought that Mundane used some artifact, like the one in the sword in the VIP spectator section. While it seems Mundane didn't break the rules, Anaros can't disprove that, yet the two are sure his fight with Goldie Gilded should yield an answer. While Anaros states that Goldie has never lost, she was paired to fight him 3 times only for Goldie to simply not fight anyone who could possibly beat him and just forfeits. Despite his the unbeaten nickname, he hates that and uses his preferred the ever-victorious moniker. As the match between Goldie and Mundane is about to begin, Quentin realizes that Anaros means that either Goldie couldn't see Mundane's true strength or Mundane is cheating. As the match starts and Goldie rushes at Mundane, he swings his sword and misses as Mundane cracks his neck to dodge. Goldie then feels how Mundane draws his sword and cuts him, only to snap back to reality seeing Mundane slowly draw his blade and wait. Quentin is surprised he managed to dodge it, but he couldn't see what happened, and Anaros explains that Mundane cracked his neck and avoided the attack. Quentin can't believe such a coincidence, but Anaros wonders if it was as she barely could even see it, which is something no normal human should be able to do. Angry for humiliating him, an irate Goldie tells Mundane that he doesn't like him, having had a 1 in a million chance to beat him but not using it. As Mundane moves to scratch his nose, Goldie gets serious by creating a golden dragon from his magical power and rushes at Mundane. However, Mundane sneezes, blowing away both the dragon and Goldie, defeating him and winning the match. Anaros notes that Goldie is stronger than she expected, and could have become an outstanding Dark Knight had he fought more often with stronger opponents. Quentin wonders what Mundane did, and Anaros explains that, if she saw right, he sneezed and swung his sword the moment he did, hitting Goldie as he crashed into it. Quentin finds that unrealistic and leaves, finding her narration a waste of time, and stating that if Mundane keeps winning, he will eventually face him and show him what he is made of. Anaros wonders if she can move like Mundane, cracking her neck and sneezing, only to realize a moment later that she's in public, and leaves feeling embarrassed. In a royal sitting room, Iris gives Purvashat the security plan for the Bushin festival, but he doesn't feel it needs more security. As Iris observes he looks in good health and Purv agrees, he claims that the news story exaggerated his injuries and guesses that Midge worries that easily because of Alexia's earlier kidnapping. He heard that Iris personally went looking for her, so he intends to follow the same example and asks they let Oriana solve their family problems themselves. King Raphael Oriana then agrees in a monotone daze with Purvashat as the Chancellor assures Iris that nothing will disrupt the Bushin festival, much to her irritation of how he delivers his promise with a smugness. The next day, Mundane easily defeats Quentin, as the crowd analyze Mundane's mysterious entry and dark horse odds in the tournament, as some are in disbelief, how the odds of the next match, Mundane vs Anaros, are 9 to -1. Meanwhile, Skell is writing a letter to Poe in a desperate bid for funds for his gambling addiction, to which Poe denied him later. Sid as Mundane can't recall Quentin's name, and is curious why he was so worked up, wondering if they met before. Back in the tunnel, Anaros faces Mundane and tells him she misjudged his strength, but she warns him that she has seen all of his moves and he must not assume he can win the same ways against her. As Mundane smiles and she demands to know what is so funny, Sid was excited she said the line and removes one of his armor plates, dropping it to make a hole in the ground due to its weight. Mundane explains that the weights are holding him back, but now playtime is over as Anaros stares in disbelief. But Anna Rose tells him to not assume he won already, showing him that she can crack her neck too. With an awkward pause, Mundane moves past her while wondering what she was trying to do. At night, Rose continues underground while battling Oriana Dark Knights to escape capture. Leaving a knight to need medical attention, Rose flees deeper into the labyrinth as the Oriana Dark Knights swear to bring her to justice. Episode 17. Sid imagines on what he will do in the arena and how to reveal he is much more powerful. Skell comes knocking on his door, stating he has a plan on how to get rich fast. He shows that Rose has a reward for turning her in or giving information about her location, and tries to convince Sid to work with him and find her, so that he can get rich. Sid sees that his sister is visiting and decides to avoid her. He accepts Skull's proposal and uses the window to leave. While walking around town, Sid hears someone playing a piano and notes it's someone good. He recalls how in his previous life, he was forced to learn to play piano. He would have rather trained for his plan to become eminence in shadow, but in time he found out that piano is quite cool. However, as he recognizes the music, he wonders if it should exist in this world and decides to see who it was playing the piano, since it may be another reincarnated person. Sid is surprised to see it's Epsilon, who like Gamma and Beta, is using what he told her to become famous. After her performance, Sid asks if that was the Moonlight Sonata and Epsilon confirms, saying from all the pieces he taught her, this one is her favorite. Epsilon reveals that received rewards for her music composition and had gained connection with influential people. Sid realizes that she plagiarized all the music he showed her. He asks her if she knows where is Rose hiding. Epsilon states that Beta is working on that case, but she heard she is hiding in the tunnels under the royal capital. Sid thanks her and leaves, but on his way, he notices the piano and smiles. Beta shares some information with Alexia on the suspicion that Perv Assad is working with the cult. They head down the tunnels under the royal capital. Beta notes it will be hard to provide evidence for Perv involvement with the cult. Iris had told Alexia that the King of Oriana didn't seem affected by Rose's actions. Alexia is also sure that if they continue to do nothing like her father suggests, the cult will eventually cause lots of problems for the kingdom. Alexia explains that they are heading to the underground passages, as there is a chance that Rose had used them to escape. Beta notes that it's a maze down there and wonders how they can leave, but Alexia states they will just return the way they came. Rose recalls how she met her father and Perv the other day. When she saw her father, the king, she knew something was wrong with him, and then saw Perv and the guards' cunning smiles. She drew her sword and attacked Perv, but the guards then yelled that she went mad and called for some guards. Rose believed she made a rational decision, but later realizes it wasn't. Even if she managed to kill Perv, he is just one of the cult, whose roots have already too deep within the Oriana kingdom. Perv told her to turn herself in before the Bushin festival, or he will have her father kill one of his guests. Rose now wonders if it's best to turn herself in, as that way, it may avoid a war. She recalls her time with Sid, but as her possession gets worse, she feels that marrying Sid and living with him would have been a dream anyway. Rose hears the Moonlight Sonata and starts following the music. Eventually, she finds Shadow, who is playing on the piano. As he finishes, Rose explains she had heard the Moonlight Sonata many times, but without a doubt this was the best performance she heard. Shadow asks her what she hoped to accomplish and Rose states she wanted to protect them, but couldn't do anything. Shadow wonders if this is her end, and if she intends to put the sword down. He notes that if she has desire, he will give her power. Rose accepts as there are things she wants to do and protect. Shadow gives her power and heals her possession. He tells her that true strength lies not in one's power, but in one's way of being. After Shadow leaves, some members of the cult show up and Rose defeats them easily. Feeling the burst of magic, Alexia and Beta run towards it and find Rose. Rose states she obtained power and will follow the path she believes in. Alexia has questions, but Rose refuses to say anything, not wanting to drag Alexia into this. As Rose keeps refusing to say anything, Alexia draws her sword, stating she will make her talk this way. The two start fighting, but Rose defeats Alexia. Rose leaves Alexia to Beta, who states that she won't stop Rose. She notes that they are all different, but may have same ideals, and their alliance may not have been such a bad idea. In the evening, Sid returns home, However, he is surprised to see his sister still waiting for him. Episode 18. Claire chokes Sid, explaining that she was getting more and more angry each second she was waiting for him. She is also angry that he keeps breaking his promises, but hands him a ticket to the Bushin Festival, telling him be there and watch her as she is replacing Princess Rose. Sid goes to the Bushin Festival and finds out that the ticket his sister gave him isn't an ordinary reserved seat ticket, but a hyper VIP seating. Going to his seat, he sees Iris Midra and assumes he got it wrong. Iris realizes he is Claire's brother and tells him he is in the correct seat while also explaining she plans taking Claire to her personal order when she graduates. Iris also apologizes to Sid for the Xenon Griffey incident. That draws people's attention, which worries Sid as it's not normal for a background character like him. Some students ask Iris if some competitor caught her eye, and Iris explains it's Anaros, but Iris herself still intends to win the tournament. Sid wonders if there is someone else who caught her eye, suggesting Mundane Man, but the two students explain that he is just fast and lucky, with no skill. Sid gets excited that he cultivated Mundane's reputation to perfection. Iris explains that there is one more person who got her eye, an elf who is also the first Bushin Festival champion, although she won't be competing. The two students realize Iris is talking about Beatrix, but note that she haven't showed her face in public in over a decade. Sid recalls Beatrix and that he knew she was strong, but didn't know she was famous. Sid then excuses himself and leaves. He feels the presence of someone strong, but is unable to reveal he knows it as he is currently a background character. Beatrix then shows after him and Sid acts surprised. Beatrix wonders if he was ignoring her, but Sid denies it. She asks him if he ran into an elf that looks like her, but Sid denies it. Beatrix hopes she can find the one she is looking for, as there are a lot of people coming to the festival. Beatrix has brought too many burgers and gives one to Sid. To return the favor, Sid gives one of his burgers to her. Purvasat takes Sid's seat and explains that his king will be attending the festival tomorrow. He wonders about Iris' father, Klaus Midger, and Iris explains that he will be also watching from tomorrow. Perv then sees Anna Rose coming out in the arena. He heard that she is in the middle of a training pilgrimage, and would love to invite her to work for his kingdom. Iris also states that a fencer of her caliber would be in use for her kingdom as well. Perv asks her what she thinks of Anna Rose's opponent, Mundane Man. Iris states she sees him for the first time, but he doesn't look very strong. However, she isn't sure if Anaros's win as Mundane is a little unnerving and there is no uncertainty in his eyes, which isn't typical for a weak fighter. The fight between Mundane Man and Anaros start. Anaros immediately closes the distance and starts attacking, but Mundane parries or dodges her attacks. She sees a chance to defeat him and slashes him, but Mundane appears behind her and tells her that was just an after-image. Mundane then quickly overpowers her and Anaros realizes that her only choice is to try and counterattack when he attacks. She waits for him to attack and attempts to counterattack, but Mundane dodges, which makes her realize he was still matching his attack to her and not the opposite. Mundane then slashes and defeats Anaros. Perv states that Iris was right. Iris is surprised that someone as strong as Mundane was unnoticed for that long. Perv states the next round would be Iris versus Mundane and wonders if she is confident that she can beat him. Iris states she can't match his beauty of swordplay, but it's not beauty that determines the winner. If this is all Mundane can do, then he won't be a match for her. However, there is a good chance that he is hiding something, which is why he disguised his stance and technique through the tournament. After leaving, Perv tells his man to investigate Mundane, noting it could be a problem if he is backed by the Lawless City. His man wonders if he is part of Shadow Garden, but Perv dismisses it, because he is a man and also doubts that Shadow Garden have a reason to make a scene at the Bushin Festival. Elsewhere, Anaros tells Mundane that she was completely defeated, and explains that she left her country to become stronger and thanks him for the lesson. She wonders how he became that strong and Mundane states he abandoned everything in pursuit of strength. Sid had accomplished 70% of his plan at the Bushin Festival. He then wonders on how to finish it and after defeating Iris to just disappear, stating his work is done. Or he wonders if he should get the evil route and act like an assassin from a shadowy organization. He returns home, but finds Claire waiting for him again, and wondering if he had fun watching her match. Sid then guesses he is dead. Episode 19. Iris is practicing and recalls her path from being a young kid who won her fight battle to who is she now. She is determined to get results and prove that she has power to stand up against the divine teachings. Sid starts to like the VIP seating as the maids get him anything he wants free of charge. Iris sits next to him, guessing he is there to cheer for his sister, and explains that she is free today as she also has a duel. She notes that he is drinking coffee, and states she likes the smell, but doesn't like bitter flavors. Sid explains that if you put tons of milk and sugar, every kind of coffee will taste the same. Iris decides to try it and finds the milk coffee delicious. Moments later, Iris hears the guards stopping a woman with a sword and wants she to give it to them. Iris then sees it's Beatrix and explains she invited her. Realizing who Beatrix is, everyone get excited and gather around her. Beatrix uses the chance and asks them if they have seen her niece, but no one has seen her. They also ask her if some competitor caught her eye, and Beatrix states it's Sid. People are surprised as Sid isn't really that good and his sister is much better, and some start to question if Beatrix is really that good. Purvas drugs King Oriana again, but is annoyed how the drug makes his odor sweet and tells his men to cover it with a perfume. Purv is sure that Rose will come to save her father and notes that since she showed signs of possession, she will also become prime material for the cult's experimentation. If Rose doesn't show up, Purv intends to use King Oriana to kill King Midger. That will result in a war between the kingdoms and the destruction of Oriana Kingdom, and Purv will lose his status, but he doesn't really care. Purv plans to make the new king of Midger his puppet and guesses the best time to move is during Iris' match. However, he is worried about Mundane Man as he couldn't find anything about him and worries that he could be quite dangerous. Purv is also worried what Shadow Garden may do and that they may be working with Rose. He goes into the VIP seating and as he passes by Beatrix, she states that he and the king stink. Purv gets angry and orders the guards to take her, but Iris stops him and explains she is her guest and it's Beatrix the war goddess. Purv then realizes who she is and that she may have awakened the hero's blood. Beatrix apologizes and Purv does the same. He takes his seat and starts to worry about Beatrix, guessing he need to eliminate her as well. He also wonders if he will be able to assassinate the king of Midger, but states it will all go normal if Rose shows up. Claire wins her fight and the Iris heads out for her match against Mundane Man. As their fight starts, Iris feels that she loses her head and jumps backwards in fear. She is surprised of what she did, and gathers herself and stands up. In that moment, she feels she is losing her leg and realizes that the entire arena is in Mundane striking range. Meanwhile, Rose gets close to the VIP seating, but sees dead cult members. Beta and other Shadow Garden members appear behind her and tells her that she can proceed and fulfill her mission. Iris keeps feeling that she is losing limbs from Mundane's attacks. She realizes she feels that due to his look in his eyes and each time he slightly shifts his gravity center, which means it's done by his strength and not by an artifact. The crowd start to get disappointed at Iris as she keeps backing up and feel that she is scared. Iris gets angry and attacks, but in that moment, she realizes that Mundane isn't even holding his sword. Everything he did was to make her see things and think he had his sword out. Mundane then pushes her sword away and grabs her by the throat and takes her down. Placing his sword at her neck, he wonders what is wrong as they are just starting. Purv can't believe that Iris lost without being even able to make a single move. Seeing Mundane, Beatrix states she wants to fight him. Rose then shows up and apologizes to her father, stating she made mistakes and will likely make one more, but she decided to follow the path she believes in. King Oriana then forgives all of her sins. Purv is surprised as he didn't instruct him of saying that. Rose cries and jumps at Purv, who then uses the king as a shield, however Rose proceeds and stabs him. In his last moments, the king tells Rose that he loves her. Purv is shocked at how easily she killed her father and gets angry. He then sees Rose holding her blade against her neck and orders his men to stop her. Mundane then comes from the window, asking if that's the choice Rose made, while cutting down Purv's men. Mundane then states it's time to reveal himself and turns to Shadow. Rose calls him Stylish Bandit Slayer. Seeing him fight, she was reminded of her past when Sid had saved her from some bandits. Since that day when she saw his fencing, she decided to become fencer herself. When Sid had killed all the bandits who kidnapped Rose, she asked him who he was. As Sid was still training back then, he is just a stylish bandit slayer. Rose is surprised to learn that Shadow was stylish bandit slayer, and even at that young age, he wasn't afraid and fought against evil. Shadow tells her that her fight isn't over. Rose then stands up and leaves. Perv wants to stop her, but all of his men are already defeated by other Shadow Garden members. Beatrix then states she will do it and jumps at Shadow. As they clash swords, Perv uses the chance to escape. Episode 20. After Mundane Man goes into the VIP seating and reveals his true appearance, Iris realizes that he is Shadow. King Midra is informed that the battle between Shadow and Beatrix may go even outside of the stadium. The king asks about Perv and gets informed that he heading towards the outskirts on a carriage and is likely directly running back to Oriana Kingdom without stopping at the embassy. They are also taking good care of Oriana's king body. King Midra tells them that, when they are returning it to Oriana Kingdom, to go through Marquis Grant, who is the leader of the anti-chancellor faction, and explains they need to prepare themselves as the darkness that has been lurking since ancient times has taken a deeper hue. Shadow is fighting Beatrix, however, he starts getting behind her with ease, while she barely manages to notice him in time and block his attacks. Iris shows up and states she wants to join the fight. She draws a blade and Shadow realizes it's a mithril blade with ancient runes, surprising him that she intends to use an artifact, but also amusing him that she would resort to what he sees as a clutch. Iris gets annoyed and turns the blade into a large fire sword and swings at Shadow. Shadow easily dodges and states that it has good visuals and is more fit for a festival spectacular. Beatrix then attacks him and Shadow continues her fight with her, with Iris joining Beatrix to fight Shadow. Their fight continues through the city and the two manage to push him towards a construction on a building. Shadow then takes two crowbars and blocks both Iris and Beatrix attacks, noting that crowbars indeed have potential. As they keep on fighting, they end on top of a train, where Shadow tells them to be careful to not fall. Meanwhile, Rose had escaped the stadium and wonders on what to do next. Alva shows up and tells her that she has two choices: to continue fighting alone or to fight alongside Shadow Garden. Rose asks Alpha if they intend to save Oriana Kingdom, but Alpha explains won't be doing anything assist her as she is right now, and if she wishes to save her kingdom, she must show her worth. Thinking for a moment, Rose decides to join Shadow Garden. While they fight, Beatrix wonders if she and Shadow have met before. Shadow states he remembers powerful opponents, but wonders if they are strong enough for him to remember them. He jumps into the river and using magic, he controls the water and shoots it at them, but notices that magic doesn't flow that good in ordinary water. He kicks Iris into the river, but as Beatrix attacks him, she manages to break his crowbar. As they keep fighting, they reach a tower, where Shadow gets behind Beatrix, but she blocks it easily, noting that she got used to his attack. Shadow congratulates her, stating that in sword skill, they are almost equal, however her use of magic isn't as good. Iris then comes attacking, but Shadow blocks her attack with his fist, stating that he can't be defeated with borrowed power. Iris tells Beatrix that she will immobilize him even if it costs her life, and then Beatrix can take him down. Iris attacks Shadow. As she swings her sword, she lets it go and attempts to grab Shadow, however, Shadow kicks her in the chin with his knee. Beatrix finishes charging her attack and attacks in that moment. She knocks Shadow back, but he throws his up and dodges her attack, and then grabs and slams her over Iris and then stomps both of them. Shadow attempts to leave, but the girls manage to stand up, and Iris tells him that by now every knight in the city should have been mobilized. He has turned the whole kingdom into his enemy, and there isn't a place he can run to. However, to their shock, Shadow starts laughing maniacally and then states he ain't running as there is no reason to. Activating its destructive magic power, which covers the entire kingdom capital, and states that the playtime is over. While this was happening, Princess Alexia Midra continued training, regardless of the situation in the capital, regardless of whether she dies or ends up reincarnating, she is determined to walk the path of the sword. Meanwhile, both Iris and Beatrix were stunned to see Shadow's power. Shadow starts casting his I Am Atomic attack, but stops before the end and leaves. Seeing that, Iris drops on her knees and cries. Sherry read on the newspaper that the demon Shadow was chased away by Iris and Beatrix. Rose is still missing after she killed her father. In Oriana Kingdom, Mordred conveyed his disappointment with Perv, to the point where he was forced to beg his superior's forgiveness for his failure. Perv also told his superiors that as long as the cult holds the royal family, Rose won't be able to stay hidden. Plus Oriana's situation is already very messy with the loss of their king. Perv is sure that Rose can't ignore it and will definitely come back. Mordred said hopefully so and told Perv not to disappoint him too much. Beatrix leaves the city, disappointed she couldn't find the one she was looking for. She tells Iris to not take her defeat too serious as there are many things mortals can't defeat. Iris tells her not to worry, because she's incapable of staying still. As Midgar Kingdom is looking for Shadow, Beta guesses that was Shadow's plan to keep them occupied with himself, and not get involved with the things happening in Oriana Kingdom. Since Shadow is actively involving himself, they decide to hurry up and tie up the loose ends and send more personnel to investigate the lawless city and keep a close eye on the major corporate alliance. With the new school term having started, Sid wonders where is Skell. Poe explains he took a long-term job. Poe regrets that he was outside the city when the demon Shadow appeared. Shadow covered the capital in magic, which must have frightened a lot of girls who would then have needed reassurance. Rose and Alpha reach the Kage domain. Alpha then explains they are heading past the mountain and deeper into the woods. Rose is surprised as magical beasts infest the region. Alpha explains that when Shadow visited the mountains, he battled the Mist Dragon. The dragon lost and dubbed Shadow ruler of this realm, and bathed him in dragon's breath. When they reach their destination in the forest, Alpha explains that this is the ancient city Alexandria, Shadow Garden's base of operations. Alpha takes Rose to Lambda and explains that Rose is a new recruit and tells Lambda to train her. Lambda calls 664 and 665 and tells them that she is putting the new recruit in their squad, naming Rose as number 666. Lambda then cuts Rose's clothes, telling her that she is now a nobody and is casting away her name, clothes and everything to become a pure, unadulterated soldier. Rose watches in horror as the burger wrapper Sid gave her is ripped to shreds before wailing in utter despair. Back at the underground ruins, Shadow plays Moonlight Sonata once more as feathers descend upon him. He says that everything has been going according to his designs, but the hour of awakening will be drawing near. After finishing his play, Shadow leaves while a soul, Black Feather lands on the piano keyboards.